The story begins when an enormous dungeon suddenly erupts in the middle of modern Japan, but while everyone else sees an impossible disaster, high school student Ryuji Furuya recognizes something terrifyingly familiar. He has seen a place like this before. Standing before the dungeon entrance, Ryuji recalls the labyrinths of another world and realizes that the past he thought he had escaped may have followed him home. Still, curiosity pulls him toward the stairs. To understand why Ryuji recognizes the dungeon, the story returns to the summer day. He fell through an ordinary hole and awakened inside a fantasy kingdom, where a desperate ruler declared him the summoned warrior, destined to defeat the Demon King. Ryuji immediately refuses the heroic mission, explaining that his school entrance exams are only a year away, and he has no intention of sacrificing his future for strangers. The king, however, insists that only he can prevent extinction. Princess Daenerys calmly promises to return Ryuji home after the Demon King is defeated. But there is one problem. The kingdom has exhausted the magical stones needed for world transit magic. Until more can be gathered, he is trapped. When Ryuji asks how long that will take, Daenerys estimates 50 years unless he kills the Demon King and claims a powerful magic stone himself. Faced with that absurd deadline, Ryuji chooses the faster path. Several months later, Ryuji is already fighting through dungeons and defeating monsters far beyond an ordinary teenager's level. If he wants to return home alive, he has no choice but to become stronger. After barely surviving another battle, Ryuji heals his injuries with magic, while Daenerys reminds him that even a weak slime once nearly killed him. His training has only begun. Daenerys insists on accompanying him, arguing that her recovery magic and combat experience will keep him alive against stronger enemies. Ryuji reluctantly accepts, unaware that she has already grown far more attached to him than she admits. A year passes, and Ryuji defeats his first lower-tier dungeon boss. It is a small victory, but it proves that his plan is working. Now skilled enough to cast healing magic on his own, Ryuji prepares to enter the next dungeon, yet Daenerys refuses to leave his side. She claims she only wants to make mana potions for him, though her blush reveals another reason. 6 months later, the pair clears a second dungeon, and Ryuji can even brew his own healing potions. With every victory, Daenerys realizes that the day he returns to Japan is drawing closer. Knowing the Demon King is far stronger than any dungeon boss, Daenerys decides to train harder so Ryuji will continue needing her. She disguises that fear as practicality and once again insists on joining his next expedition. 5 years after his summoning, Ryuji and Daenerys face a dragon inside another dungeon. The monster attacks without warning. Too fast. Daenerys strikes first and brings the dragon down before Ryuji can be seriously wounded. The danger passes, but the battle makes one thing clear. Even after years of training, neither of them can afford a single careless moment. With nearly every dungeon conquered, Ryuji believes the Demon King's defeat is finally within reach. Daenerys sadly asks him to wait for her at the castle afterward, while he promises that his power is now great enough to protect them both. Before they separate, Daenerys reaches for Ryuji's hand and admits that she is relieved he survived beside her. The awkward gesture says what neither of them is brave enough to confess. 10 years after being summoned, Ryuji finally defeats the Demon King, surviving countless battles that nearly killed him. With the promise fulfilled, Daenerys prepares the world transit spell that will send him back to Japan. The kingdom celebrates its savior, and the king offers Ryuji both the throne and Daenerys' hand in marriage. Daenerys silently hopes he will accept. Ryuji apologizes and chooses to return to the family he has not seen for 10 years. His answer shatters Daenerys, who can only hide behind the king as her tears finally spill. Inside the transfer chamber, Daenerys activates the enormous magic circle and begins the spell that will return Ryuji home. The light rises around him, marking the end of their long journey together. Daenerys lashes out through her tears and orders the oblivious hero to leave before she loses her resolve. Ryuji tells her to stay safe, and in the next instant, he disappears. Ryuji awakens on a familiar street in Japan, carrying 10 years of memories inside a body returned to its younger age. At last, he is home. His childhood friend Kyoko appears exactly as he remembers her, still wearing a middle school uniform. Ryuji realizes that while a decade passed for him, almost no time has moved in his original world. Reaching the Furuya home, Ryuji sees his mother again and nearly breaks down. To her, he has only been away briefly. To him, this reunion has taken 10 brutal years. His mother laughs off his strange behavior and leaves to shop with his father, while Ryuji decides to enjoy ordinary pleasures like snacks and anime. For a moment, life feels peaceful again. On his way back from the convenience store, Ryuji savors the quiet streets of Japan, until Kyoko rushes toward him in panic. His parents are in trouble. The car carrying Ryuji's parents has been crushed by a truck, and both die instantly. He defeated a demon king to return to them, only to lose them on the very day he came home. At the funeral, Ryuji wonders whether this tragedy is the demon king's curse or the price demanded for crossing between worlds. No answer can lessen the loss. Kyoko helps him place his parents' ashes beside their photographs, but Ryuji can barely accept the reality before him. The victory he once dreamed of now feels completely hollow. Before he can mourn in peace, a group of relatives storms into the house and immediately asks about the life insurance money. Their concern is not for Ryuji. It is for the inheritance. Because Ryuji is still legally a child, his aunt and uncle claim control over the insurance payment and threaten to send him to a juvenile institution unless he hands over the cash. Grief turns into fury. The relatives immediately divide up Ryuji's parents' possessions, demanding the watch, suit, land, and even the family business rights before the funeral is over. Their greed leaves him speechless. Ryuji finally understands that these people do not see him as family at all. To them, he is merely an obstacle standing between them and an inheritance. He refuses to surrender either the insurance money or his parents' belongings, calmly drawing a line they never expected him to defend. The room goes silent, outraged by his resistance. The relatives boast about their prestigious connections and order their hired-side thugs to teach him a lesson. Ryuji only shrugs and calls them exactly what they are: a collection of idiots. The men surround Ryuji and discuss how badly they can beat him without leaving visible evidence. They expect a frightened child. Instead, they are standing before someone who spent 10 years fighting monsters. 3 punches fly at once, but to Ryuji they move in painfully slow motion. Compared with dungeon beasts, these attackers are almost motionless. Ryuji watches the men stumble over one another, surprised by how completely his otherworldly senses outclass ordinary humans. He does not even need to fight seriously. When they try again, Ryuji slips between their attacks and makes them collide, judging them slower than the weakest slimes he once faced. Humiliating, the thugs crash into one another and drop in pain before landing a single blow. The arrogant relatives can only stare as their intimidation tactic collapses instantly. Even after the attack, Ryuji's aunt and uncle worry about the injured criminals rather than him. Their reaction confirms that there is no affection left to preserve. Ryuji activates hypnosis, a skill he once considered useless against the magic-resistant people of the other world. Here, however, ordinary humans have no defense at all. Under the spell, he asks whether they routinely extort property by threatening vulnerable families, and his uncle proudly admits everything. The confession is easier than Ryuji expected. Ryuji expands the hypnosis to everyone in the room, ensuring that the relative is and their accomplices will obey his instructions without resistance. Their greed has made the solution simple. The hypnotized relatives surrender stacks of condolence money and thank Ryuji for teaching them a lesson in common sense. He even makes them promise to send more later. Ryuji empties their accounts, keeps only enough for living expenses, and locks the rest away before dismissing them. The inheritance is safe, but victory brings little comfort. Alone before his parents' memorial, Ryuji wonders whether saving himself was the right choice. Had he remained in the car with them, perhaps they would still be alive, or perhaps all 3 would have died. For the first time since returning, Ryuji finally breaks down in front of his parents' ashes. No battle or magic can protect him from this grief. A few weeks later, Kyoko tells him that identical dungeons have appeared across the world, igniting political conflict and military operations everywhere. Ryuji immediately recognizes the scale of what is coming. As mines and oil fields run dry, experts warn that civilization may collapse into a primitive age, while governments fight over access to the new dungeons. Humanity needs another source of resources, and fast. Ryuji realizes the timing cannot be accidental. The dungeons have appeared precisely when natural resources are nearing exhaustion. While the internet erupts in chaos, he decides to inspect the nearest one himself. Using his invisibility spell, Ryuji walks past the police guarding the entrance and slips inside unnoticed. He has entered countless dungeons before, but he still needs to know why this one appeared in Japan. The stone corridors confirm his suspicion immediately. This is not merely similar to the other world's labyrinths. It is the same kind of dungeon. Slimes occupy the first level, goblins the second, and every detail matches Ryuji's old experience. The connection between both worlds is now undeniable. Deeper inside, Ryuji finds a dragon and considers what its body represents: meat, hide, claws, bones, and a magic stone, all valuable resources. If monsters continue spawning, the global shortage could be solved. The problem is that modern soldiers have already failed against dungeon creatures, while Japan has no established class of adventurers capable of harvesting them. Ryuji remembers how essential those hunters were in the other world. He stores the dragon's remains in his item box, hoping others will eventually inherit the role of adventurer, then escapes the dungeon before anyone notices. First, lunch. Near the exit, a glowing mark appears on Ryuji's palm and displays level 1. The number makes no sense after everything he accomplished in the other world. Ryuji tries to disable the display with a spell, but the level refuses to disappear. His old abilities remain intact, yet this new system seems to follow different rules. Distracted by the mysterious status mark, Ryuji accidentally lets his invisibility spell lapse near the guard's nard. He quickly restores it and slips away before they can understand what they saw. Hearing the officers worry about the world's dwindling resources strengthens Ryuji's belief that dungeon materials will become vital. He then uses teleportation, a movement spell linked to places he has previously visited. Ryuji arrives directly inside his house and congratulates himself on the convenience, only to remember that he forgot to buy lunch. Even legendary heroes make ordinary mistakes. Too lazy to go out again, Ryuji collapses on the floor until Kaloko appears with food and is stunned by how little he has changed. His return to normal life is already becoming complicated. Kyoko prepares a full homemade meal, and Ryuji stares at it like a treasure after years of dungeon rations. Ordinary food has never looked so good. Ryuji devours everything while praising the cooking, only to learn that Kyoko made the salad herself. She plays it down, but his sincere thanks clearly delight her. While they talk, Ryuji notices the level 1 mark again and asks Kyoko to examine his palm. To her, however, it looks like nothing more than an ordinary crease. Curious whether the mark appears on everyone, Ryuji checks Kyoko's hand, leaving her flustered by the sudden contact. Her palm shows no status at all. Kyoko quickly pulls away and leaves before her embarrassment becomes obvious, while Ryuji remains focused on the mystery. The level display is visible only to its owner. Ryuji concludes that the mark must be tied to dungeon entry, yet being level 1 after defeating the Demon King makes no sense. He decides to investigate a higher floor the next day. Meanwhile, heavily equipped police units enter the dungeon to secure magic stones needed for electricity and other essential systems. None of them knows what truly waits inside. The operation turns dangerous immediately when a slime engulfs and crushes one officer before the team can react. Their first encounter becomes a brutal warning. The remaining officers surround the slime, hammering its body until they expose the core hidden within. Only by destroying that center can they stop it. The core breaks, the slime collapses, and the unit celebrates its first kill before collecting both the jelly and magic stones. Humanity has taken its first clumsy step toward dungeon harvesting. One police officer, Sato, is badly shaken after being crushed, while the captain counts only 17 stones from a costly operation involving police, defense personnel, and firefighters. The price is already high. When the captain learns that Officer Sato has a strange number on his palm, he removes the traumatized man from duty and orders counseling and rest. The status system is beginning to reveal itself. Officer Sato reports that his palm now reads level 2, while the captain's own display shows level 3 and the job title fighter. Levels and classes are real. The next morning, Kyoko explains that dungeon entrants around the world are seeing level and job titles, though governments are hiding exact figures. Japan has only a handful of confirmed cases, and none are very high. Ryuji realizes he should already possess an adventurer class, yet his palm shows no job at all, suggesting his status may be bugged. Around them, students dream of becoming adventurers for fame and money. At school, the dungeon craze dominates every conversation. and classmates boast about future careers before asking Ryuji how deep he could go. He listens quietly, knowing they have no idea who is standing beside them. A new law bans students from entering dungeons before middle school graduation. Yet, Yokoyama is summoned to the principal's office because someone from the military wants to meet him. Ryuji quietly follows. When Yokoyama is sent to the bathroom before the meeting, Ryuji slips into the neighboring stall and casts vision through the wall. He is not here to interfere, only to gather information. The military officer explains that adventurer jobs have special characteristics and asks Yokoyama about his own status. Yokoyama proudly reveals that he is a level 6 thief, earning immediate praise. The officer demonstrates a rare dungeon item called a scouter, which lets the user read another person's level, then asks to see Yokoyama's palm. Hidden nearby, Ryuji instantly decides he wants one. Yokoyama admits that his thief class has not awakened any special characteristic yet, likely because he has never entered a dungeon. The officer tells him to make contact again after graduation. Elsewhere, dungeon management officials debate how to search the labyrinth for the country's benefit, despite the ban on citizens without useful characteristics. Kunimi and his superior decide bureaucracy will not stop them. Kunimi accompanies his boss and a lawyer into the dungeon after online videos convince them that the danger is exaggerated. When no job appears on their palms, they simply continue anyway. Using a purchased dungeon map and a guiding tool, the group follows the recommended route through the first floor. They briefly suspect someone else may be nearby, then dismiss the thought. A cluster of slimes suddenly emerges, forcing Kunimi and his boss to retreat down a side passage. Their carefully planned expedition begins falling apart at once. They soon discover another slime blocking the opposite route, leaving them trapped between monsters. The dungeon has turned their shortcut into a cage. At the same time, a content creator watches dungeon videos exploding in popularity online and assumes many clips are fake productions made by desperate former employees. The public still treats the crisis like entertainment. Back inside, Kunimi orders his boss to flee while he distracts the approaching slimes, even though he has never fought a single monster. One enemy is already too much. Two are certain death. Kunimi grabs a makeshift weapon, but a slime engulfs his legs and begins dragging him under. As the pressure closes around him, he wonders whether this is where he dies. His boss attacks the slime to free him, refusing to escape even after Kunimi points out that a wife and daughter are waiting at home. Abandoning a subordinate is not an option. The boss declares that he could never face his family, after leaving Kunimi behind, then continues striking despite the danger. For the first time, Kunimi sees the man beneath the bluster. 3 years earlier, the boss had hired Kunimi after his release from prison, ignoring suspicious coworkers and giving him a chance when no one else would. That memory explains why Kunimi cannot let him die now. Kunimi remembers an earlier job where he exposed coworkers stealing merchandise from a truck, only to be beaten for interfering. Even then, he refused to stay silent when something was wrong. The thieves retaliated by setting the company truck on fire, leaving Kunimi's boss hospitalized and the business in ruins. Kunimi believed his honesty had destroyed the man who trusted him. Instead of blaming him, the injured boss joked that insurance would cover the loss and told Kunimi to take better care of himself. That kindness convinced Kunimi he was serving a genuinely good person. Back in the dungeon, Kunimi lies helpless and prays that the mysterious creator of the supposedly fake dungeon videos is real. If that person exists, he begs them to save his boss. A violent blast tears through the corridor and destroys the attacking slimes in an instant. Ryuji has arrived. Keeping his face hidden behind a mask, Ryuji heals Kunimi and his boss before either can identify him. He tells them they will recover and quietly prepares to leave. The rescued pair thank their unknown savior, but Ryuji refuses his name and warns them never to enter a dungeon without proper equipment again. Luck will not save them twice. Before departing, Ryuji explains that the area is a slime spawning point and advises them to travel together while searching for the scouter. Kunimi can only wonder how this stranger knew so much. Later, Kyoko helps Ryuji with an assignment and suggests writing a fantasy story about a former warrior reincarnating in another world. Ryuji finds the idea amusingly close to his own impossible life. Over snacks, Kyoko reveals that the Ministry of Education plans to issue scouters to selected junior high students for level assessments, especially those who already possess adventurer characteristics. Ryuji's interest sharpens immediately. Kyoko asks about Ryuji's mysterious characteristics and his claims about another world, then admits that she has awakened a characteristic of her own. She intends to attend the assessment. Although embarrassed, Kyoko confesses that she does not want to go alone and asks Ryuji to accompany her. He agrees, and her anxious expression instantly brightens. After Kyoko leaves, Ryuji returns to the dungeon and recalls discussing level assessments with Daenerys. Even in the other world, measuring power had never been simple or politically harmless. Daenerys once explained that nobles often concealed low levels because society looked down on the weak, while Ryuji naively wondered why anyone would lie. She promised to respect him regardless, while teasing that she might become arrogant if she surpassed him. Ryuji reminded her that the kingdom had spent 50 years of stored magical energy to summon him, making his sudden growth extraordinary, even by otherworldly standards. Daenerys acknowledged that his ability to master complex summoning magic under pressure was exceptional. He also credited Daenerys for keeping him alive during his early training, admitting that she had always been the stronger and more experienced one. No matter what number appeared on her palm, he promised never to belittle her. Daenerys is moved to tears by Ryuji's promise, then hides her embarrassment by shouting at him to stop talking. It becomes their first true break from relentless dungeon exploration. Back in Japan, Ryuji remembers that he had already surpassed level 400 midway through his old journey, yet his new status shows neither that strength nor any job. The blank display gives him a bad feeling. Government leaders study foreign dungeon data, prioritize sending adventurers inside, and plan to collect resources before existing supplies run out. The new labyrinths are rapidly becoming national infrastructure. Officials note that Japan has an unusually high number of dungeons and awakened citizens, then approve higher purchase prices and new laws to cultivate young adventurers after graduation. The country's future may depend on them. At the Level Assessment Center, Ryuji and Kyoko find crowds of students from multiple schools, all hoping for profitable adventurer careers. The venue feels less like an exam and more like a gold rush. Inside, an exhausted examiner guards a scouter worth roughly 10 million yen, while silently complaining about dealing with children. Ryuji's enhanced hearing catches every thought. He mutters under his breath. Kyoko is confirmed as a level 1 warrior, and the examiner recommends that she attend an adventurer high school. She accepts with barely contained excitement. Ryuji places his palm before the scouter, but the device finds only level 1 and no job. The examiner's expression changes immediately. Ryuji insists that he already possesses the adventurer characteristic, yet Kyoko stops him from arguing further. The examiner privately concludes that a jobless level 1 should never enter a dungeon. He explains that adventurers survive through balanced teams, with jobs granting unique skills for magic, scouting, healing, and combat. Without a class, Ryuji would contribute nothing and only endanger others. Ryuji claims his job simply failed to appear, and boasts that he once reached the 999th floor as a warrior. But the examiner dismisses him as a reckless child who knows nothing about real dungeon danger. After Ryuji reluctantly apologizes, he notices something suspicious. The examiner casually mentions the 5th floor Mad Bee, despite that information being officially restricted. This man has entered a dungeon before. As they leave, Kyoko suggests that she and Ryuji attend Adventurer High School together, easing his frustration. Before he can answer, her classmate Kei Ito calls her over. Kei proudly reveals that he is a level 1 hunter, while Kyoko shares her level 1 warrior result. He invites her to travel with him, and Ryuji watches their friendly exchange in silence. Kei admits he is relieved to know someone else with an adventurer characteristic, and Kyoko promises to see him at school. Ryuji says nothing, though the scene bothers him more than he expects. Far away in Britain's county of Cluny, a cheerful blonde influencer records an introduction before entering a dungeon's 5th floor. Her followers will receive the expedition after she returns, because ordinary cameras cannot function inside. The British adventurer is Isabella Rain Cluny, 15-year-old heir to House Cluny and a level 9 holy knight. Surrounded by attendants who will document the results afterward, she leads her party into the dungeon as if entering a stage. Holy Knight is an advanced frontline class, and Isabella's growth already exceeds that of ordinary warriors and fighters. Her stats climb quickly, but she has yet to meet anyone with the same rare job. On the first floor, Isabella's team encounters slimes that look disturbingly realistic compared with game monsters. She orders everyone to remain alert, despite having defeated similar enemies the day before. More slimes pour from the corridors, forcing the party into formation, while mages cast fireballs and healers support the vanguard. Then Isabella notices movement behind them. Isabella cuts through the flanking slimes before they can reach the rear guard, and her companions praise her speed. She is equally pleased that the monsters keep respawning, creating a renewable source of materials and experience. After reorganizing, the party prepares for the second floor, where goblins are known to target female adventurers. Isabella reminds everyone that levels and skills may resemble a game, but wounds and death are painfully real. A goblin slips behind the party and reaches for the female mage before anyone notices. The ambush is already within arm's reach. The mage screams, breaks free, and blasts the attacker with a fireball at point-blank range. One mistake nearly becomes fatal. Isabella praises the mage's progress and offers mana potions, while privately finding real goblins far more repulsive than their fantasy versions. She orders the wounded members to stay behind her. A massive goblin horde floods the corridor, but Isabella charges straight into it and unleashes a wide-area Holy Night attack. The swarm disappears beneath a storm of steel and roses. When the party realizes they are surrounded, the guards move to protect Isabella, only for her skill to erase the encirclement almost instantly. Their count needs far less protection than they expected. The soldiers admit Isabella is overwhelmingly strong, yet remind themselves that even she has limits and still requires healing. Determined to contribute, they prepare to handle the goblins approaching from behind. Once the battle ends, the healer restores the exhausted fighters, and Isabella discovers that reaching level 10 has granted her a healing spell of her own. She immediately joins the support work. Back at the Clooney estate, the party displays a mountain of magic stones, minerals, equipment, and monster materials, worth roughly £100,000. Isabella insists that profits be divided equally after expenses. Duke Grosvenor arrives and insults the common-born party members, claiming their presence damages the dignity of House Clooney. Because his family supports hers, Isabella is forced to hear him out. Grosvenor demands half the expedition's profits in exchange for silence, but Isabella refuses to reduce the rewards of companions who risked their lives. She offers only her personal share, and nothing more. Grosvenor argues that the dungeon is a national golden goose, and should be controlled by the government, citing more than 100,000 dead or missing explorers. Isabella counters that danger cannot be solved by authority alone. The Duke's advisor notes that the known world record is only 8 floors, while Isabella is already level 10, and growing unusually quickly, suggesting her predictions may be correct. He begins considering a government monopoly on dungeon jobs. Isabella realizes that as long as she remains in Britain, Grosvenor and the political families around him will keep using the dungeon to imprison and control her. Her public smile hides a growing resolve to escape. Back in Tokyo, Ryuji suddenly sneezes while relaxing at home and wonders whether he has caught a cold after lowering his guard. The air conditioner is the far more likely culprit. Ryuji cures himself with healing magic, equips his old adventuring gear, then uses invisibility and teleportation to begin a serious conquest of the Ueno Park dungeon. This time, he intends to reach the bottom. He bypasses the early monsters with stealth and descends beyond every floor observed by modern explorers, eventually reaching floor 999. The architecture confirms that this is the Demon King's dungeon from the other world. The deepest chamber lies on floor 1000, where Ryuji once fought the Demon King, and its detection magic may recognize anyone it has encountered before. Whatever waits below could remember him. Inside the final chamber, Ryuji encounters an ebony dragon whose overwhelming presence rivals the Demon King. Rather than retreat, he draws his weapon and prepares to test whether 10 years of battle were enough. The dragon moves with impossible speed despite its massive body, forcing Ryuji into close combat before it can build momentum. He lands a full power slash, but the creature remains terrifyingly fast. Even after Ryuji severs part of its tail, the dragon regenerates and launches dense spheres of dark energy from the air. He realizes too late that the injury barely slowed it. the ebony dragon takes flight and floods the chamber with destructive attacks, though its damaged tail disrupts its balance. Ryuji decides to exploit that weakness and end the aerial battle quickly. Dodging explosions while recalling Daenerys' warnings, Ryuji counters with Ice Arrow and keeps moving. In raw firepower, this dragon may be stronger than the Demon King himself. A blast of black flame catches Ryuji and drives him into the floor, leaving him unable to rise immediately. The dragon watches with unmistakable satisfaction. Believing its opponent finished, the beast begins forming a colossal meteor above the chamber. Ryuji waits beneath it, measuring the opening created by the spell. Ryuji had only pretended to be defeated, and the moment the dragon commits to its attack, he strikes through its exposed body and cancels the meteor. The trap closes. The ebony dragon falls. The victory should grant multiple levels. Yet Ryuji's palm stubbornly remains at level 1, proving the status system still cannot read him correctly. With the dragon's enormous corpse and treasure everywhere, he begins gathering the loot before the dungeon absorbs it. Among the treasure, Ryuji discovers the dungeon core, an artifact that allows its owner to move freely between floors, while gathering materials and experience. This is the key he needed. Ryuji removes the core from the Demon King's dungeon and stores as much of the ebony dragon's loot as his item box can hold. If other dungeons possess similar cores, he may claim those as well. Once everything valuable is secured, Ryuji realizes he has reached the maximum capacity of his storage magic. With his strength reconfirmed, he is finally ready to begin the plan that will fund a peaceful life filled with endless anime. Returning home, Ryuji starts building the equipment and online setup required for his famous plan. He wants everything ready before Kyoko officially becomes an adventurer. The next morning, Kyoko reports that Japan now has more than 100 confirmed dungeons and mentions a rumor about monsters escaping one of them, causing civilian casualties before the self-defense forces intervened. Ryuji suspects the story is false. Kyoko adds that unchecked monsters could multiply and destroy humanity, citing an ancient civilizations supposedly ruined by sudden dungeons. Her source is a sensational occult magazine, which explains a great deal. Kei joins them on the way to school, and Ryuji immediately notices the boy's level 1 hunter status. More importantly, Kyoko appears to have been waiting for him. When Kei compliments Kyoko's hairstyle, she blushes and walks off with him, leaving Ryuji behind with an unfamiliar pressure in his chest. Something feels wrong. Watching the two together, Ryuji briefly wonders whether he is romantically in love with Kyoko. He rejects the idea almost immediately, though not very convincingly. Kyoko reacts happily to something Kei says, and Ryuji realizes his discomfort resembles a father watching his daughter bring home a boyfriend. The comparison does not make him feel better. He finally decides that Kyoko feels like family after growing up beside him, and relief washes away the strange jealousy. At school, however, a new rumor about fraudulent dungeon guides changes the mood. A classmate explains that fake strategy videos have already caused deaths. Yet victims rarely file complaints because dungeon entry itself may have been illegal. When Kei and Kyoko discuss researching online tactics, Ryuji hears a death flag. Inside the bathroom, Ryuji questions why anyone would intentionally spread dangerous misinformation, then opens his item box. He cannot leave school openly, so he prepares a substitute. Ryuji activates a substitute puppet, creating a perfect copy of himself inside the stall. The clone looks alive enough to fool anyone who does not examine it closely. The puppet can move and obey orders for a full day, though it is consumed afterward, and Ryuji has not used one in years. He instructs it to attend classes and avoid exposing the deception. After ordering the clone to collect information until school ends, Ryuji teleports home and completes a plane reservation. The next phase of his plan will take him overseas. Before leaving, Ryuji promises his parents that he will use the money they left him for something more meaningful than simple living expenses. Their inheritance will finance the future he chooses for himself. He teleports to Haneda Airport, cancels invisibility in what he believes is an empty corner, and startles a passerby before boarding. Magic may be faster, but Ryuji needs to visit new places normally before he can teleport there. Ryuji experiences his first commercial flight and feels unexpectedly excited, though airport security and ticket prices make him question whether this is the best use of his relative's money. Still, the journey is necessary. After flying to Kochi and traveling onward to Katsurahama, Ryuji registers the location for future teleportation. One trip is enough. Next time, he can arrive instantly. The Katsurahama dungeon is far more crowded than expected, with inexperienced adventurers lining up and discussing online strategy guides. Ryuji enters among them while listening to their dangerous confidence. Once alone inside, Ryuji uses detection to confirm that the dungeon follows a layout he remembers from the other world, then retrieves a self-made drone golem equipped with a high-performance digital camera. Because ordinary electronics cannot be powered reliably inside dungeons, Ryuji rebuilt the camera with magic using crafting skills learned during his travels. Rare materials limit him to one drone, so he hides it with invisibility and begins recording carefully. Ryuji changes into a dramatic adventurer costume and prepares to film his first dungeon guide, only to realize he has forgotten one crucial detail. He needs a face that cannot be recognized. At school, the substitute puppet behaves more alertly than the real Ryuji, and classmates immediately notice the difference. The clone explains it away as advanced magic and crafting, while Kyoko simply seems pleased that he is acting energetic. Back in Katsurahama, Ryuji completes the disguise by placing a stylized helmet over his face. The anonymous dungeon guide is finally ready. He starts recording an introduction for the Dungeon Exploration Information Channel. But nerves destroy every attempt. Legendary combat is easier than speaking naturally to a camera. Ryuji eventually manages a usable greeting and announces that he will conquer the first 2 floors of the Katsurahama dungeon, saving detailed monster strategies for another video. Even then, repeated retakes only make him more awkward. An hour and more than 30 attempts later, Ryuji finally begins the guide, offering viewers a downloadable map while explaining that the entrance is already overcrowded with hunting parties. Finding even a slime has become difficult. He warns that death cannot be reversed and advises adventurers to rely on teammates, then reveals a reliable slime location and nearby treasure chests that may contain rare items such as scouters. Useful information replaces reckless hype. Ryuji opens a chest containing a potion and explains that treasure respawns every 24 hours, then deliberately steps on a hidden trap so viewers can recognize it. His helmet absorbs the harmless demonstration. After showing the safe route and warning about the narrow stairs, Ryuji descends to the 2nd floor, where goblins are dramatically stronger than slimes. Adventurers without useful traits face a frighteningly high chance of dying here. Ryuji deliberately tumbles down the dangerous staircase to show viewers how easily someone can be injured, only to spot a terrified woman fleeing from goblins. The demonstration ends. A rescue begins. He instantly casts twin fireballs and erases the pursuing monsters, then asks whether she is safe. The woman thanks him and begs for help finding the friend who was taken. Using detection, Ryuji locates the missing companion and moves so quickly that the woman can barely follow. She can only stare as the armored stranger disappears down the corridor. Ryuji reaches the captive and discovers that the woman's supposedly beautiful companion is actually an older bald man surrounded by goblins. The surprise lasts 1 second. Imagining Kyoko and Kei exploring dungeons together after graduation stirs an irrational burst of jealousy, and Ryuji channels far too much power into a fireball. Bad timing. The spell detonates like artillery and tears apart an enormous section of the corridor, leaving the rescued man and the camera crew stunned. Ryuji's quiet guide has become an explosion showcase. Realizing that 10 peaceful years have dulled his control, Ryuji checks with detection and confirms that no civilians were hit. He awkwardly labels the attack a high-output fireball, though it was closer to a flame cannon. The rescued man asks whether such damage will collapse the dungeon, and Ryuji explains that its automatic repair system will restore everything by the next day. His answer sounds so much like a lecture that even he notices. The couple introduces themselves as Yoko and Ken, then begins correcting Ryuji's advice despite nearly dying on the 2nd floor. He warns them to level against slimes first, but they refuse to listen. With his map damaged and the pair determined to leave, Ryuji decides not to force them, even though an imagined Daenerys scolds for allowing people to ignore correct instructions. He hides with invisibility and watches them go. Ryuji teleports home and considers returning the next day to conquer the 2nd floor properly. But school will resume soon. His filming schedule is already becoming difficult. He calculates that 1 weekday dungeon and 2 weekend dungeons would let him document the first 2 floors of 3 locations within 3 months. The real obstacle is editing, so he turns to his favorite voice actors' videos for inspiration. At school, Ryuji realizes he forgot lunch, and his classmate Yamada kindly offers half of his yakisoba bread and a margarine hot dog. A small act of friendship catches Ryuji completely off guard. Ryuji dramatically promises never to forget Yamada's generosity, while Yamada laughs that sharing food is normal between friends. Ryuji wipes away a tear and pretends an eyelash caused it. Meanwhile, Yoko and Ken return to the dungeon alone, where goblins overwhelm Ken and corner Yoko. Her earlier confidence vanishes as the creatures close in. Before the goblins can touch her, their hands freeze solid under a sudden spell. Ryuji has followed them despite everything, and he is not letting them die. With the goblins frozen in place, Ryuji orders Yoko and Ken to retreat to the first floor immediately. They are alive, but only because he followed them. Ryuji severs Ken's restraints with Wind Cutter, allowing the couple to reunite, then sharply asks why they returned to the second floor without leveling. They admit his earlier warning had been correct. Yoko and Ken explain that online videos promised anyone could clear the second floor at low level, and they even paid for the full guide. Ryuji finally understands how the lethal misinformation is being sold. Ryuji retrieves the dormant Proto-1 from the item box that returned with him from the other world, then installs weight reduction magic so the autonomous golem can move independently. His editing problem may have found a solution. Proto-1 wakes with enough force to knock Ryuji across the room, then casually explains that its body feels lighter. Ryuji immediately regrets activating it indoors. When Proto offers to disable the weight reduction device, Ryuji stops it before the heavy body crashes through the floor. The upgrade stays on. Ryuji tells Proto that he defeated the Demon King, returned home, and found new dungeons spreading alongside deadly false guides. To protect civilization, and preserve a world where anime can continue, he wants accurate walkthrough videos. Proto assumes it will help hunt monsters, but Ryuji assigns it the far less glamorous role of video editor, and refuses to take it into dangerous dungeons. The golem is visibly disappointed. Ryuji argues that no one in Japan understands autonomous golems, so bringing Proto outside would attract too much attention. Even the machine's sad expression cannot change his decision. After editing one sample video, Ryuji tells Proto to use it as a reference, learn computer operation through the internet, and master the mouse and keyboard. Proto accepts the new mission. Before leaving, Ryuji gives one absolute order: never open the folder labeled OTKR. Proto promises, and Ryuji powers it down without explaining why. Ryuji teleports to Akihabara, buys a dedicated computer, transfers the footage, and reactivates Proto, who asks why it lost consciousness during the trip. Ryuji avoids the question and points to the new equipment. Proto reveals that the forbidden OTKR folder is already gone, having erased Ryuji's collection of revealing anime images while its memories were being adjusted. Ryuji can only mourn in silence before ordering the editing lessons to begin. Proto then asks whether its master wants to meet his family, and whether he has already seen them. The innocent question strikes a wound Ryuji has been avoiding. Ryuji answers that he has met them, then quietly asks Proto not to discuss the subject for a while. The golem recognizes that its master is unhappy and agrees. Ryuji moves on to the enormous Ueno Park dungeon, where adventurers have built a base around the entrance, and descends to the 5th floor to continue filming. By now, the helmet and camera feel almost natural. On the 5th floor, Ryuji encounters a swarm of mad bees. Defeating them would be easy, but preserving their valuable materials requires precision, so he targets the monster's wings instead of crushing their bodies. Ryuji releases 6 wind cutters at once, slicing through every pair of wings before the swarm can close in. The bees drop helplessly to the floor. Fight over. With the nuisance cleared, Ryuji decides to save the detailed map and explanation for the next recording. Watching Proto quietly follow his instructions, he wonders whether the robot is truly beginning to learn. Proto was the first robot Ryuji ever created in the other world, rebuilt again and again whenever his craftsmanship improved. Fueled by his strange Japanese obsessions, the crude golem gradually became powerful, dependable, and almost human. Back then, Proto handled countless chores and stood beside Ryuji through every hardship, becoming far more than a tool. That is why waking him for video editing was never the whole reason. Ryuji had not returned alone. Even after losing the world he once called home, Ryuji still has one companion who remembers those years with him. Proto is proof that his other life was real, and that part of it came back too. At home, Ryuji discovers that Proto has already edited 18 videos, each longer than 15 minutes. The speed is absurd, but Proto immediately requests a dedicated computer so the work can continue properly. Proto deliberately leaves a few clumsy moments in the footage because small mistakes make the masked explorer feel human. Ryuji protests that only his coolest scenes should remain, yet their playful argument makes the work unexpectedly enjoyable. February arrives, bringing the entrance examination for Adventure High School. Kyoko has already left when Ryuji stops by, and her amused mother quickly notices the awkward distance between the childhood friends. At Tokyo Ueno Adventure High School, Ryuji completes the written examination with unusual enthusiasm. Since dungeon practice counts as school time, attending this academy may finally let him explore openly without sacrificing his ordinary life. After the test, Kei warns Kyoko not to act too close to Ryuji before the physical examination. If he asks to join her team, she may be unable to refuse, and a jobless level 1 student could become a fatal burden inside a dungeon. Kyoko reluctantly accepts Kei's reasoning, already beginning to judge party members more heavily by jobs and levels. Ryuji's enhanced hearing catches every word. Ryuji knows his level 1, jobless status is only a strange system error, but explaining his true strength would create far more trouble. When Kyoko approaches, she apologizes awkwardly and asks how his exam went. Kyoko says she will inspect the school with Kei Ito, then leaves at his side before Ryuji can respond. Hiding his disappointment, Ryuji decides to scout the campus alone and locate a suitable teleportation point before going home. March brings their middle school graduation. As Ryuji exchanges farewells with Yamada and the others, they promise that graduating will not end the friendships they built together. Japanese law forbids minors from entering dungeons before middle school graduation, yet many rush inside the moment the restriction ends. Ryuji suspects Kyoko will go with Kei, so he prepares to protect her from false guides and reckless strategies. 15 seconds remain. The moment the law finally allows him to enter openly, Ryuji calls Proto with sudden urgency. His preparations are complete, and the anonymous dungeon channel is ready to step into the public eye. Proto obeys and changes every scheduled upload to public at once. In a single command, the dungeon exploration information channel officially goes live. Meanwhile, late March crowds have already packed Ueno Dungeon with unemployed workers and people abandoned by the changing economy. Even weak slimes now attract arguments because too many desperate adventurers are competing for the same meager income. Two frustrated hunters admit that the overcrowding has ruined their earnings, yet reliable information about deeper floors is almost impossible to find. Fake guides dominate the internet, and those who trust them often never return. Elsewhere inside the dungeon, Sarah notices a corridor that appeared in one of Ryuji's recordings. Before she can investigate, a slime lunges from behind, forcing Taylor to pull her out of danger. Online reactions begin pouring in as viewers compare Ryuji's footage with their own experiences. Some thank the channel for helping them earn safely, while others condemn the fraudulent videos that have already gotten people killed. The creator of one fake guide is questioned by the police, but his lawyer insists every video carried an enter at your own risk warning. Without authentic footage from inside the dungeon, proving deliberate fraud seems nearly impossible. A television company reaches the same conclusion. Genuine dungeon footage would be enormously profitable. Since normal electronics fail beyond the entrance, the executives pressure a subcontractor into finding some way to film inside. Anyway, the subcontracted crew carries an absurdly expensive experimental camera into Ueno Dungeon, hoping one successful recording will make them rich. It does not even power on. Their 10 million yen gamble collapses instantly. At midnight on April 1st, Ryuji and Proto launch the channel with more than 100 completed videos. Ryuji expects a dramatic button press, only to learn that Proto used the platform's scheduling function and released everything automatically. The first walkthrough begins with Ryuji's masked introduction, and seeing his own channel finally exist fills him with genuine excitement. After months of planning, his project has begun. A video production company discovers the footage and immediately realizes it cannot be ordinary CGI. The president first considers stealing Ryuji's camera, then orders his staff to investigate how the impossible recording was made. At the police department, officers compare Ryuji's map and entrance footage with official records. The details match perfectly, so they print copies and prepare to verify the channel inside Ueno Dungeon themselves. Across Roppongi and beyond, people rapidly share the mysterious walkthrough. Before anyone can fully process whether it is real, a nationwide communications outage interrupts the growing frenzy. Back at home, Ryuji watches his views and subscriber count surge, happily crediting Proto's editing. Proto responds with blunt honesty, but their celebration continues as the numbers climb faster by the second. Ryuji keeps refreshing the page, captivated by every new view, until the site suddenly stops loading. Proto suspects the servers are overloaded. On his very first day as a creator, Ryuji may already have broken the platform. The sudden outage reaches the White House, where officials initially fear a foreign cyber attack. With internet and phone connections failing across the United States, even the president demands immediate answers. Intelligence reports reveal that the disruption began after one MeTube channel drew worldwide attention. The president stares at the impossible dungeon footage and asks the question every government now shares: who is this masked explorer? As the video ends by asking viewers to like and subscribe, the administration confirmed that the mysterious Dungeons Exploration Information Channel originated in Japan. The crisis has suddenly become an international intelligent matter. On screen, Ryuji calmly explains the weak points of ordinary slimes and demonstrates a safe beginner strategy. To the public, it is useful guidance. To foreign governments, it is evidence of knowledge far beyond current research. The president asks his granddaughter, Linda Bluestone, a 15-year-old top-ranked American adventurer, to evaluate the footage. She drops her casual attitude at once and agrees to inspect it personally. Linda cannot identify the filming method, but she immediately recognizes that the combat is genuine. More troubling still, the masked adventurer's level appears far higher than her own. Rather than wait for official analysis, Linda changes her plans and heads for the Rocky Mountain dungeon that afternoon. She also asks to borrow the channel's mysterious camera technology so she can record her own expedition. The president realizes Japan may now possess both a superior adventurer and technology capable of functioning inside dungeons. As long as the channel remains public, every nation can learn from it, then compete for whoever improves fastest. While Proto loses another game and gets banned from using items, Ryuji receives a call from tax accountant Kijima. The channel's sudden success has created problems no amount of combat power can solve. Ryuji has already discussed forming a company with Kijima, and now he heads out to meet her. Proto stays behind to edit while Ryuji also considers recruiting skilled people whose disabilities have kept them out of ordinary work. At the family restaurant, Ryuji is surprised to find Kijima younger and far more striking than he imagined. She greets him professionally, though his unexpected appearance leaves her quietly flustered as well. Kijima quickly regains control and suggests moving to a quieter place for their discussion. Ryuji assumes she is only being considerate, never realizing that she is struggling to hide her own nervousness. They settle into a private booth, where Kijima efficiently handles the order before Ryuji can decide what to drink. Her composure reassures him that entrusting the channel's finances to her was the right choice. Then Kijima reveals the scale of the explosion. The subscriber count has multiplied hundreds of times, and advertising revenue is growing beyond anything Ryuji expected. His secret project is already becoming a real business. Before discussing taxes, Kijima asks the crucial question, whether the dungeon footage is genuine. Ryuji confirms it, but explains that his camera depends on magical engineering and rare materials worth nearly 900 million yen. Even if another group somehow reproduced the camera, they would still lack Ryuji's years of dungeon knowledge and combat's experience. Kijima immediately understands. The channel has an advantage that money alone cannot copy. Kijima explains that monetization approval should arrive soon, but an exclusive distribution contract would prevent unauthorized copies from consuming the channel's revenue. Ryuji agrees to review the notification once it appears. The official proposal offers 40 million yen per year. Since Ryuji has already established Furuya Project, Kojima can manage the finances, but she warns that the rapidly growing company now needs proper legal and tax support. Kojima recommends outsourcing those responsibilities to a law firm and certified accounting office she trusts. Their fees are high, yet the channel's income can cover them, and both offices will answer Ryuji directly whenever problems arise. She promises to sign the contracts the next day, then abruptly asks whether Ryuji likes cats. When he mentions the hair on her shirt, Kojima panics and pulls open her jacket to inspect the supposed evidence. Realizing she came out in a pajama top, Kojima becomes completely flustered. Ryuji politely avoids staring, but her polished image has already cracked, revealing an unexpectedly clumsy side beneath the professional exterior. Kojima insists on walking Ryuji home because he is still a minor, only to start heading in the wrong direction herself. He quietly corrects her, and the pair set off together through the night. During the walk, Kojima asks whether Ryuji plans to keep uploading dungeon guides. He confirms it, explaining that the videos can help adventurers gather resources safely, while also providing him with a profitable long-term project. Kojima sincerely supports the idea and offers help whenever trouble arises. Ryuji thanks her, now convinced that the capable yet awkward accountant is someone he can trust. After saying goodnight, Kojima walks away with effortless elegance. Still worried about letting her travel alone so late, Ryuji turns invisible and follows from a distance until he sees her safely enter a taxi. The night stirs a memory from 4 years before the Demon King's defeat, when the armies of humanity first gathered against an overwhelming demonic force. It was Ryuji's first true battlefield in the other world. Beside him stood Princess Daenerys, outwardly confident despite the danger surrounding them. She teasingly called it Ryuji's heroic debut, while he tried to focus on the thousands of lives depending on his next move. Once the battle began, allied magic marked the enemy formations and opened a path through the chaos. Ryuji charged at the head of the army, drawing the human forces behind him toward the Demon King's ranks. The next morning, Proto invites Ryuji to review the channel's rapidly growing comment section. Most messages from overseas are positive, but the Japanese replies are far more mixed and much harsher. Ryuji finds viewers accusing him of faking the footage, criticizing his mask, mocking his voice, and complaining about every small movement. One comment even attacks the way he jumps. The words hit harder than expected. Proto points out that many viewers are also grateful and supportive, but Ryuji's eyes keep returning to the insults. He insists he is fine. Clearly he is not. Then Ryuji notices an awkwardly worded message, telling him not to be discouraged, and praising the very traits others mocked. The strange encouragement leaves him blushing, and wishing the writer had simply called him cool. Ryuji asks Proto to show him the truly vicious anonymous replies, expecting something far worse than ordinary criticism. Instead, the childish insults remind him of another time when strangers judged him without understanding what he had done. After Ryuji's first major victory in the other world, Daenerys personally thanked him before the gathered soldiers. He wondered whether a hero truly needed public recognition, but her sincere praise made the celebration meaningful. Yet rumors soon spread that Ryuji had cheated, been cursed, or secretly served the Demon King. Daenerys listened to every accusation with growing anger, knowing that the people praising him one day could condemn him the next. She finally broke down and begged Ryuji not to let the rumors hurt him. Even if everyone else turned against him, Daenerys promised that she would continue believing in the man who had risked his life to save them. After the campaign, Daenerys remained exhausted from the return journey and the effort of caring for the wounded. Ryuji offered healing and told her to rest, even threatening to carry her if she refused. Daenerys quietly leaned against him, admitting that his concern eased a fear she could not share with anyone else. Ryuji thought she was merely tired, never noticing how deeply his presence had already become her refuge. To Ryuji, Daenerys was a beloved princess surrounded by loyal subjects and admiration. What he failed to understand was that public affection could not replace the one person who truly saw how lonely she felt. Remembering her now, Ryuji finally wonders whether Daenerys had been relying on him far more than he realized. The thought leaves him staring into the distance, quietly missing the princess he left behind. Ryuji asks Proto whether the comment problem can be managed without silencing genuine viewers. Proto explains that the worst messages can simply be filtered, allowing useful criticism to remain while obvious abuse disappears. Once the automatic moderation begins removing hostile spam and repeated insults, Ryuji feels an immediate weight lift from his shoulders. Proto assures him that constructive opinions will still appear, so the channel will not become an empty echo chamber. With the comment section under control, Ryuji prepares another expedition and tells Proto to keep the videos running. This time he heads toward Ueno Dungeon's 27th floor, a maze known for traps and misleading routes. Ryuji considers whether to demonstrate the floor's fog and flame hazards immediately, then decides against forcing the recording. He takes a short break instead, choosing patience over another rushed performance. On April 3rd, Ryuji relaxes at home, while Proto reports that magazines, news sites, and internet programs are all discussing the channel. The mysterious masked explorer has become the center of Japan's dungeon conversations almost overnight. A television special explains that the world's remaining energy reserves may be exhausted within decades, making dungeon resources humanity's newest hope. Every nation is now racing to understand the structures that appeared only a year earlier. Researchers have already confirmed that dungeon minerals and magic stones contain extraordinary energy, but extracting them safely remains difficult. Ryuji quietly realizes that the same materials could also let him construct more golems like Proto. The program warns that even low floors become deadly once stronger monsters appear, while ordinary weapons lose effectiveness deeper inside. Ryuji's detailed walkthroughs may therefore become more than entertainment. They could determine who survives. A university expert explains that declining oil and coal supplies will eventually destabilize every major industry. Dungeon resources may prevent that collapse, but no one yet knows whether extraction can be made safe, reliable, or affordable. The television special then claims to have interviewed the creator of the Dungeon Exploration Information Channel. A masked man appears on screen, boasting about the impossible footage as though he were the real explorer. Ryuji nearly falls out of his chair. He has never given an interview, yet the imposter copies his armor and mannerisms badly enough to fool viewers who only know the channel through a helmet. Worse, the program surrounds the fake creator with supposed acquaintances and experts who validate his story. Ryuji can only stare, wondering who organized such an elaborate deception and what they hope to gain. When the imposter uses a distorted imitation of his voice, Ryuji's embarrassment turns into fury. Proto may find the performance amusing, but Ryuji cannot forgive someone hijacking the identity he built to protect adventurers. Ryuji immediately visits Kojima's accounting office and asks what can be done. She explains that the affiliated law firm is already contacting the broadcaster and preparing a response based on impersonation and defamation. The program even presents a fake mother, former teacher, classmate, and older brother to support the imposter's invented past. Every emotional testimony is staged. Every detail is false. Because only Kojima knows the real creator's identity, she can expose the fraud without revealing Ryuji's face. She recommends that he record an official denial while the lawyers pursue the broadcaster responsible. Ryuji agrees to record the official response, and Kojima thanks him for trusting her. Their conversation turns unexpectedly personal when she shyly admits that she has been following every walkthrough he uploads. Kojima confesses that she has watched the channel's videos repeatedly and is already waiting for the next release. Her enthusiasm catches Ryuji off guard, but it also reminds him that real people genuinely value his work. She assures him that everyone involved in spreading the impersonation will be addressed through proper legal channels. Before he leaves, Kojima says she looks forward to the new video, not as his accountant, but as a viewer. Ryuji returns home in an unusually good mood, prompting Proto to ask what happened. Instead of explaining, Ryuji decides to channel that energy into the official denial video Kojima requested. He enters Ueno Dungeon looking for a quiet filming location, but the lower floors are crowded. Using detection magic, Ryuji scans the area and notices two familiar adventurers moving nearby. The pair are Kyoko and Kei Ito, exploring together for the first time after graduation. Kei confidently takes the lead and uses concealment techniques, while Kyoko follows despite her uncertainty. Kei leans close and promises to protect Kyoko no matter how dangerous the dungeon becomes. Watching invisibly from nearby, Ryuji senses something unsettling behind the overly polished performance. Ryuji completes the channel's official statement, warning that impersonators and defamatory broadcasts will face legal action. Proto finds the stern delivery entertaining and immediately asks for another take. Entrance day arrives at Tokyo Ueno Adventure High School. Ryuji spots Kyoko waiting near the gate, and despite the awkwardness between them, she agrees to attend the ceremony at his side. When Ryuji asks about Kei, Kyoko reveals that they already broke up after she caught him cheating. The relationship Ryuji worried about for weeks ended almost as soon as it began. Inside the crowded venue, Kyoko tries to guide them while Ryuji nearly heads toward the wrong hall. Their familiar bickering slowly returns, easing some of the distance that formed before graduation. Kyoko suddenly studies him and says he has been acting strange lately, as though he is hiding something. Ryuji immediately fears she has discovered the channel, but she only asks about his mysterious job status. Although the system still labels Ryuji as jobless and level 1, Kyoko senses that he has changed dramatically. She wonders whether he is deliberately holding back, while Ryuji struggles to answer without exposing the truth. A television reporter outside the school asks new students to share their levels and jobs. Kyoko proudly identifies herself as a level 2 warrior, but Ryuji's honest answer, no job, leaves the interviewer visibly confused. Ryuji casually adds that he reached level 1500 the previous day, though his official display remains unchanged. The reporter cannot tell whether he is joking, and the camera crew quickly moves on. Students are divided into classes according to their entrance results and combat potential. Ryuji enters his assigned classroom, aware that the Academy's rankings may soon expose just how unreliable the system's judgment of him truly is. Ryuji searches the class lists and expects his written score to place him near the top, especially after studying everything needed for the examination. Yet his name is missing from the higher-ranked classes entirely. Kyoko checks the remaining boards and finally finds him assigned to Class E, the Academy's lowest group. Ryuji assumes there must be some mistake, but the printed list leaves no room for argument. Seeing his full name beside the bottom-ranked class confirms it. The system has once again judged him by the useless level 1 and jobless readings, rather than the strength he actually possesses. Nearby, another student reacts with equal disbelief when he notices Ryuji's placement. For a moment, the Academy's supposedly precise evaluation feels so absurd that even strangers can only stare. Ryuji remembers fighting monsters that could destroy nations and reaching levels no modern adventurer can imagine. After surviving another world, being labeled a bottom-tier beginner is almost impossible to comprehend. Kyoko explains that Class E is reserved for students with the weakest official results, then points him toward the correct corridor. Ryuji forces a smile and heads there alone. Class 1E is loud, crowded, and filled with students already resigned to being treated as failures. Ryuji takes an empty seat, wondering how long he can hide among people the Academy has underestimated. Their homeroom teacher welcomes the class and reminds them that rankings can change through effort and dungeon performance. Ryuji listens closely. If results matter more than labels, then climbing from the bottom will be easy. Ryuji decides that his official level does not matter if he can prove himself through results. He has no particular desire to enter Class A, but escaping the Academy's lowest rank should still be possible. The homeroom teacher begins introductions and asks each student to state their name, job, and preferred role in a party. Warriors, priests, mages, and supports answer one after another until the question reaches Ryuji. When Ryuji says he has no job, the entire classroom freezes. Then the whispers begin, spreading from desk to desk until even the teacher stares at him in disbelief. The class erupts into repeated chants of no job, treating his status like a joke. Ryuji sits through the humiliation in silence, while the teacher admits she had never expected someone with an even worse evaluation than the rest of Class E. Two boys immediately surround Ryuji and suggest that a jobless student should leave before becoming a burden. They assume he cannot fight and warn that nobody will ever risk forming a dungeon party with him. The teacher finally stops the ridicule and reveals that Ryuji ranked first in both the written and physical entrance examinations. The principal and vice principal personally placed him in Class E, making his presence there highly unusual. The bullies continue mocking him, so Ryuji calmly asks permission to leave for the dungeon. His matter-of-fact response unsettles them, especially after they admit that they themselves are still too frightened to explore seriously. One boy mutters another insult under his breath, certain the teacher cannot hear it. Ryuji notices her lack of reaction, then repeats his request to visit the dungeon while the room falls quiet. One bully grabs Ryuji's shoulder and asks who would ever enter a dungeon with him. Ryuji calmly says he is going alone, ignores the provocation, and leaves while the teacher warns everyone not to cause trouble. The moment Ryuji walks away, the bully's hand begins throbbing from the simple contact. His martial artist classmate is stunned. Touching the supposedly useless student felt like striking solid steel. Ryuji reaches the academy's private entrance to Ueno Dungeon, where students can enter through a simplified registration system. It is his first official school expedition, and he intends to gather enough achievements to change his ranking quickly. The facility provides lockers, changing rooms, and rental equipment for inexperienced students. Ryuji notes that the Adventurers Guild may eventually offer similar services, then changes clothes and heads below. Using a dungeon core allows Ryuji to teleport directly to the deepest floor he has already conquered. He chooses a challenge against the Black Dragon, the boss of a separate dungeon he previously cleared. The instant the timer begins, the dragon charges and unleashes a barrage of attacks. Ryuji slips through every strike at impossible speed, closing the distance before the monster can adjust. One decisive blow ends the raid in less than 6 seconds, setting a new personal record. The Black Dragon collapses before its strongest attack can even begin. Among the rewards, Ryuji finds a spellbook containing Level Drain Level 2. The upgrade is interesting, but the skill remains inefficient against opponents near his own absurd level, so he stores it for later. Back home, Ryuji decides that raw combat footage is not enough and prepares a separate recording for a new sub-channel. This time, he will teach viewers how to use the materials gathered inside dungeons. Wearing an apron over his armor, Ryuji launches the Dungeon Exploration Information Kitchen. Proto positions multiple cameras, while Ryuji nervously begins his first crafting demonstration. He starts with slime mucus, an ordinary drop that most adventurers dismiss as worthless. Combined with the right ingredients, however, it becomes the essential base for a basic potion. Ryuji adds medicinal moss and carefully stabilizes the mixture, explaining how each component affects quality. Proto records every step as the cloudy liquid gradually transforms into a usable restorative. The finished potion works immediately, healing minor damage and even improving Ryuji's skin. The result is successful, though tasting his own experimental medicine leaves him feeling slightly ridiculous. Proto declares the footage usable, but warns that the raw recording is far too long. Ryuji asks him to cut the repetitive explanations and reduce the episode to a reasonable length before release. By the next morning, the crafting video has exploded alongside the main channel, and the prices of slime mucus and medicinal moss are already rising. Ryuji briefly considers selling his own stock, then rejects the idea to avoid attracting suspicion. The channel now expands beyond walkthroughs, offering recipes, crafting methods, and practical uses for dungeon materials. With viewers demanding more, Ryuji's second major content series officially begins. Rumors spread through the academy that a beautiful British transfer student is arriving. Ryuji pays little attention until the description begins sounding strangely familiar. The new student is Isabella Rhine Clooney, Britain's famous young holy knight. She left the political pressure surrounding House Clooney and entered the Japanese academy partly to investigate the masked adventurer who fascinated her. Before the transfer, British analysts identified Ryuji Furuya as a possible link to the Dungeon Exploration Information Channel. Isabella recognized the quiet teenager from surveillance images, even though he looked nothing like a legendary hero. House Clooney's advisors noted that Ryuji repeatedly looked towards supposedly hidden cameras, revealing awareness far beyond an ordinary student. Isabella began wondering how often he noticed people watching him. The analysts concluded that no normal cameraman could follow Ryuji so perfectly through lethal battles. If he could detect hidden observers, approaching him secretly would be almost impossible. Some British officials considered pressuring Ryuji into cooperation, but Isabella rejected the idea. A boy who defeats dragons alone cannot be controlled by ordinary soldiers, and threatening him would be disastrous. Instead, Isabella was encouraged to befriend Ryuji and build a voluntary connection between him and Britain. A teasing suggestion that she might win his heart made the diplomatic mission suddenly feel personal. Isabella protested that she was only 15, the same age as Ryuji, but the thought still made her face turn red before she could stop it. Now, standing inside the academy, Isabella finally sees Ryuji in front. The world's strongest adventurer looks like an ordinary student, yet the possibility that he is DTJC makes her heart pound. Back in Britain, officials continue monitoring Furuya Project and waiting for Japan's response to the channel's growing influence. They wonder how long Ryuji can maintain peaceful school life before the world closes in. At school, an intimidating upperclassman confronts Ryuji and demands to know why someone with top examination scores remains in Class E. The boy himself climbed through the rankings through combat and refuses to accept the Academy's strange decision. Rather than insulting him, the upperclassman invites Ryuji to join his party once he advances. His direct confidence surprises Ryuji, who begins to see that not everyone at the Academy judges strength by job titles alone. The older student walks away with effortless confidence, leaving nearby girls impressed, and Ryuji slightly overwhelmed. Their admiration only makes the entire encounter more embarrassing. Before Ryuji can return to class, his homeroom teacher remembers an urgent message. The chairman's office has summoned him. She cannot explain why, but tells him to go immediately. The teacher tries to reassure Ryuji that the request may involve his unusual entrance results and dungeon record. Her scattered explanation offers little comfort, so he heads toward the administrative wing alone. At the end of the corridor, Ryuji reaches the chairman's office and notices someone waiting nearby. When their eyes meet, the unfamiliar girl's expression changes at once. The waiting girl politely bows as Ryuji approaches, but neither introduces themselves. Ryuji continues toward the chairman's office, unaware that Isabella is carefully studying every movement he makes. After he passes, Isabella watches his back with growing certainty. The ordinary-looking student matches the figure hidden behind the channel's armor, and seeing him at close range only deepens her fascination. Ryuji knocks and announces himself at the chairman's office. The moment he steps inside, a crushing presence fills the room, warning him that the meeting is not going to be ordinary. A level 25 assassin attacks without warning, but Ryuji reacts instantly and pins the man to the floor. The supposed jobless level 1 overwhelms an elite adult before the ambush even properly begins. Ryuji reminds his attacker that killing is forbidden in this world, and asks whether he is truly the school chairman. The man introduces himself as Iwaki and calmly accepts defeat. Chairman Iwaki looks nothing like the polished administrator Ryuji expected from official appearances. Yet he confirms his position with an easy smile. His relaxed attitude makes the surprise attack feel even more suspicious. The chairman apologizes and admits that the assault was simply a test, rather than hide behind tactics or negotiation. He decides to address the real reason Ryuji was summoned. Iwaki leans forward and asks whether Ryuji is the former hero who returned from another world. For the first time since coming home, someone in Japan identifies his secret directly. Ryuji panics, but Iwaki immediately reveals his own secret. He also returned from another world. The chairman recognizes the signs because his official status suffers from the same impossible system error. Iwaki raises his hand and displays level 1, despite having just attacked with the skill of an elite assassin. Ryuji finally sees proof that the job and level system cannot properly measure people who gained power elsewhere. The chairman explains that he returned 5 years earlier, long before dungeons became public knowledge. Since then, he has quietly prepared for the possibility that other returnees might appear in Japan. Iwaki founded the Adventurer School and helped shape the modern guild system, so returnees and unusual students would have somewhere to develop safely. Ryuji's contradictory examination results made his identity obvious. Chairman Iwaki is also an enthusiastic viewer of Ryuji's channel and bombards him with questions about filming monsters. Before the conversation becomes chaotic, an assistant arrives with plans for the coming dungeon event. Iwaki explains that a phenomenon called random shuffle time is approaching. During this period, dungeon floors rearrange, routes disappear, and monsters can emerge far outside their normal territories. Previous shuffles caused serious casualties when powerful creatures appeared on lower floors and trapped unprepared parties. At the same time, rare treasure chests and valuable resources become far more common, tempting adventurers to take reckless risks. The next shuffle begins tomorrow, and Iwaki asks Ryuji to guide a group of students through it. Ryuji protests that his channel schedule is full, but the chairman reminds him that protecting young adventurers is why he began recording. Ryuji argues that forbidding students from entering will only drive them to explore secretly without support. If the academy cannot stop them, guiding the strongest groups may be the safest option, and Iwaki knows it. Iwaki thanks Ryuji for understanding and promises not to force the assignment if he truly refuses. Still, both the chairman and his assistant make it clear that several promising students will depend on him. The academy must protect its reputation while allowing exceptional students to pursue rare resources during the shuffle. Ryuji realizes that Iwaki has carefully arranged the situation so that refusing would place young adventurers at greater risk. Iwaki lightens the mood by teasing Ryuji about spending time with talented girls from the academy. Ryuji rejects the implication, but the chairman only grins and tells him not to overlook useful connections. With the discussion finally over, Ryuji leaves the office and tries to focus on tomorrow's mission. Random shuffle time will make familiar floors unpredictable, so even he cannot afford to become careless. On the first day of the shuffle, a giant crab-like monster appears on Ueno Dungeon's 11th floor, far above its normal territory. A student party struggles to contain it as status effects and defensive skills begin failing. The creature's level and resistance exceed everything the group expected, rendering poison and ordinary attacks useless. One adventurer is thrown down and realizes the monster is about to finish him. Before the fatal blow lands, Isabella charges into the battle and intercepts the beast. Shield raised and sword ready, Britain's young holy knight places herself between the monster and the collapsing party. Isabella checks the rescued party and confirms that the Class A students and their escort, assassin Tanaka, are unharmed. Tanaka is stunned because Isabella's movements were too fast for even his trained eyes to follow. Isabella warns the group not to push deeper during random shuffle time and asks whether they followed the channel's safety instructions. Once they admit they did, she orders them to retreat while the route remains open. Tanaka learns that another group has already advanced far below, where the shuffle has produced monsters beyond their expected levels. The number he hears is alarming. Something is wrong. The previous day, Ryuji had been celebrating the money his channel was finally earning when level 26, assassin Tanaka, appeared at his home. The unexpected visitor immediately changed his plans. Tanaka apologized for arriving without notice, then turned to leave after mentioning an early start the next morning. Ryuji refused to let such a suspicious explanation end the conversation so easily. The assassin finally admits that Chairman Iwaki sent him to coordinate the student protection mission. Although Tanaka appears severe, his careful concern for the younger adventurers reveals why the school trusts him. Tanaka explains that the academy operates under national authority and receives exceptional support because dungeon education has become a strategic priority. During the shuffle, protecting students matters more than reputation or profit. A large number of students will gather underground as rare monsters and treasure appear, so powerful escorts must be placed throughout the dungeon. Ryuji is assigned to the most dangerous section. The departure is only minutes away. Tanaka reviews the protection assignments and explains that Isabella Rainey Clooney and other elite adventurers will cover the upper student groups. Ryuji notices how many powerful figures have gathered solely to keep the academy safe. Even Chairman Iwaki and the remaining senior staff will enter the dungeon, spreading themselves across vulnerable floors. Ryuji calculates that the arrangement should barely hold, unless the shuffle produces something far beyond expectations. Tanaka insists that no sensible party will push into the most dangerous depths, but Ryuji has seen greed overcome caution too many times. The higher the promised reward, the more likely someone will ignore every warning. That fear proves justified on the 38th floor, where a dragon suddenly appears before a party of young mages. The monster should never have been anywhere near their route. The students launch ice and support spells in rapid succession, trying to slow the creature before it can close the distance. For a moment, their coordinated barrage appears to work. Then the dragon breaks through and sweeps the battlefield with overwhelming force. The party scatters as their formation collapses, barely avoiding the monster's claws and breath. After a desperate struggle, the group survives and celebrates the rare rewards scattered across the floor. Some students immediately start talking about treasure and luxury items, already forgetting how close they came to dying. Saint Knight Wu Hanfa silences them, reminding the party that only her intervention and Ayano's support prevented a massacre. Ranked second in the world at level 40, she knows the battle was never easy. The rescued students relax once Saint Knight Hanfa Wu and Great Sage Ayano Sanzanin join them. Some boast that the two world-ranked adventurers will make the expedition easy, ignoring that both women came because the group was already in danger. Wu warns that protecting reckless students will not preserve the Academy's reputation if everyone dies anyway. When the others misunderstand her blunt words, she quickly denies wishing death on anyone. Ayano, a level 40 sage tied for second in the world rankings, quietly agrees to escort the group onward. Her reserved manner contrasts sharply with the students' noisy excitement. Ayano finally warns that the earlier battle involved monsters far more dangerous than expected, and that someone may be injured next time. The students are so surprised to hear her speak that they cheer instead of listening. Normally, Ayano is a noblewoman known for avoiding attention, yet she also hides an intense rivalry with Isabella. The group remains fascinated by her status, while her actual warning is almost completely ignored. Most of Class A believes they have already achieved their objective, but Ayano proposes ending the expedition on the current floor. The suggestion disappoints those still dreaming about treasure. One student argues that the party defeated the last monster and can continue earning rare rewards. The others seize on that optimism, believing the presence of Wu and Ayano makes further danger irrelevant. The excited students push ahead before the escorts can stop them. Ayano notices that their mana reserves are already low, and Wu reluctantly agrees to retreat, knowing any deaths will become their responsibility. As Wu and Ayano retreat, they discuss the duty of professional adventurers to protect weaker parties, even when those people ignore every warning. Ayano wonders whether the reckless students will finally turn back without them. Wu agrees that responsibility matters, but she remains troubled by the classmates who continued deeper. Ayano is equally worried, especially because Wu's blunt courage often leads her to place herself in danger first. Ayano remembers an old promise from her training days, to protect the people who could not protect themselves. The memory strengthens her resolve, even though following the students would mean entering a far more dangerous section. Just as Hanfa prepares to return, Isabella appears in the corridor and asks where the others went. The arrival of Britain's top-ranked young holy knight immediately changes their options. Isabella Rene Clooney introduces herself with a warm smile, her level 40 status and world rank placing her above nearly every adventurer present. Hanfa and Ayano greet her cautiously. Isabella reports that monsters displaced by the shuffle are moving between floors, and that several student groups have already advanced below. Ayano's expression changes when she realizes how many lives may now be exposed. At the dungeon entrance, assassin Tanaka uses Shadowrun to search for Ryuji, only to sense something pass at a speed he cannot identify. The supposedly protected operation is slipping beyond his control. A popular adventurer reassures the waiting students that the academy has powerful escorts throughout the dungeon. Ryuji listens quietly beside Kyoko, knowing confidence will mean nothing if the shuffle produces an enemy nobody else can stop. Tanaka finally reaches Ryuji and reports the emergency. The Class A party has ignored orders and descended to the 37th floor. He asks Ryuji to enter Ueno dungeon immediately before the route shifts again. The escorts organize a path through the crowded entrance, while Tanaka assigns roles and keeps the public away. Ryuji studies the available lines of sight, preparing to move faster than anyone can follow. Below, Isabella, Wu, and Ayano race toward the missing students. They conserve their strength while discussing the displaced monsters ahead, knowing the wrong encounter could force them into a battle far from any safe zone. Isabella tries to lighten the tension by teasing Ayano's shorter stride, but the sage refuses to slow down. Wu urges both of them onward as the danger signals grow stronger. On the 37th floor, the stranded party stands frozen, before a presence none of them can measure. Even their highest level fighter cannot hide the fear spreading through the formation. A massive creature blocks the only exit, its eye opening in the darkness as the students realize there is no escape. Their excitement over rare treasure disappears. They are going to die. Isabella senses the crisis and orders Wu and Ayano to gather everyone while she clears a route. The three world-ranked adventurers accelerate, but the distance between them and the trapped students remains dangerously long. Teleportation cannot carry the entire group directly to safety, and the nearest rest area is still far away. Isabella continues forward, determined to reach the students before the monster makes its first move. A blonde student remembers passing Ryuji in the hallway the day before and realizes his hidden level may be far beyond ordinary students. The quiet boy has remained in her thoughts ever since. Meanwhile, Isabella, Wu, and Ayano continue racing toward the 37th floor. Every second matters, and Isabella pushes the group onward despite the strain of maintaining such speed. Ryuji uses the Wonder Market's staff-only passages as a hidden route, knowing ordinary teleportation inside the public dungeon would expose too much. One employee notices him slip into the restricted area too late. The worker follows and finds the corridor empty. Ryuji has already vanished, using magic to bypass the crowded entrance and reach Ueno dungeon without anyone seeing how he traveled. At the dungeon entrance, injured adventurers flood the plaza and beg for help, many of them victims of the very dangers Ryuji warned about in his videos. He scans the chaos for the fastest route below. People reach toward him from every direction, but another healer is already treating the wounded. Ryuji leaves the surface casualties in capable hands and focuses on the students trapped deeper underground. High Priest Ken Takeshi uses extra heal to close severe wounds instantly, shocking Ryuji with the advanced spell. Ken scolds the rescued adventurers for letting greed carry them 10 floors beyond their ability. As more injured people demand attention, Ken continues healing them one by one, while directing another priest toward the most critical patient. Confident the surface group will survive, Ryuji moves on. On the 37th floor, the trapped students identify the monster from Ryuji's videos. A baby dragon that normally appears around the 100th floor. Random shuffle time has dragged a nightmare far above its natural territory. The dragon bares its teeth while the students struggle to maintain formation. One fighter forces himself to respond calmly, encouraging the others before fear can break the party apart. Wu takes command and buys the group time to reorganize. With the students supporting from behind, she steps forward to confront the dragon at close range. The monster's speed and strength exceed expectations, forcing Wu to adjust after the first exchange. A single mistake would let it tear through the entire formation. Wu plants herself directly before the dragon, determined to finish the battle quickly. Her arms tense as she prepares a decisive strike against the creature's exposed side. Before the dragon can counter, Ayano casts Iceberg and floods the corridor with freezing magic. Massive ice formations lock the monster in place and create an opening. The students cheer as the dragon becomes trapped, but the relief lasts only a moment. Wu is thrown backward by the creature's desperate struggle, forcing the others to catch her. The frozen battlefield erupts in a violent explosion as the dragon breaks against the combined assault. Wu watches the smoke clear, exhausted, but still standing. The dragon bursts free of Ayano's ice before the party can celebrate. Wu launches herself back into the fight, refusing to let the creature reach the students behind her. Isabella joins the assault and drives the dragon backward with a powerful strike, but the monster's enormous health barely moves. Even world-ranked adventurers cannot finish it quickly. Realizing the battle will drag on, Isabella orders the students to evacuate while the three women hold the line. Ayano uses extra heal and support magic to keep Wu standing as the retreat begins. The students hurry toward the surface while Isabella distributes her remaining potions to the exhausted escorts. Ayano accepts the last bottle, knowing they may not receive another chance to recover. Ayano thanks her, while Wu jokes that Isabella's method of throwing supplies is hardly elegant. Isabella apologizes, but the brief humor cannot hide how little strength they have left. At the same time, Ryuji reaches the first floor and tries to teleport deeper, only to discover that the necessary dungeon core is missing. With no shortcut available, he begins running toward the 37th floor at full speed. The dragon remains alive and increasingly enraged. Ayano admits she has enough mana for only one more major spell, and Wu warns that their healing resources are almost gone. The monster charges before they can prepare. Wu and Ayano are thrown aside, leaving Isabella alone in its path as she raises her shield to protect them. A blur suddenly crosses the corridor and strikes the dragon's legs before it can crush Isabella. Wu catches only fragments of the movement, while Ayano realizes someone impossibly fast has entered the battle. Ryuji pulls the injured women clear and unleashes a devastating attack that drives the dragon backward. Ayano and Wu stare as the creature is forced away by a fighter they cannot properly see. Ayano immediately casts Greater Sage Blessing and maintains a continuous support field around the mysterious warrior. With her magic amplifying him, Ryuji tears through the dragon's defenses. The battle drains Ayano's mana at a dangerous rate, but Wu joins the assault and creates another opening. Their coordinated pressure prevents the dragon from turning on the escaping students. Ayano spends her remaining strength on one final iceberg, burying the weakened dragon beneath a mountain of frozen magic. The corridor shakes as the monster is finally destroyed. Isabella, Wu, and Ayano look toward the newcomer, realizing he arrived only moments before they would have been overwhelmed. Ryuji exhales in relief. He barely made it. His ordinary clothes were damaged during the sprint, but the channel helmet survived and still hides his face. Ryuji silently thanks himself for bringing it into the dungeon. The three women approach and recognize the mask of the Dungeon Exploration Information Channel. Their shock deepens when they notice that the legendary explorer is wearing a cheap shirt beneath the armor. The women stare in silence as Ryuji collects the dragon's valuable drops with his item box. He apologizes for taking the rewards, then casually mentions that many other adventurers still need help. Their stunned reactions make the moment painfully awkward, so Ryuji decides to finish quickly and leave. He reflects that the channel's information helped people survive, even if today's crisis ruined what should have been a peaceful day. To clear the remaining debris, Ryuji releases what he intends to be a modest spell. He misjudges his strength, and the resulting blast tears across the corridor with terrifying force. Inside the helmet, Ryuji quietly admits the mistake. Isabella, Wu, and Ayano can only stare at the destruction, wondering how the channel's masked explorer could possess such overwhelming magic. Ryuji asks whether any of them need healing, and learns that all three are nearly exhausted. Their levels are extraordinary by modern standards, but the prolonged battle has drained everything. Isabella and Wu brighten at the offer, though they doubt ordinary recovery magic can fully restore world-ranked adventurers. Ryuji raises his hand anyway. He casts extra heal over the entire group, surrounding the women in brilliant restorative light. Their wounds close, mana stabilizes, and fatigue disappears almost instantly. Wu announces that she is completely healed, while Isabella realizes she has never experienced recovery magic this powerful. Ino studies Ryuji with growing suspicion. This is beyond anything a normal priest can do. Isabella and Wu thank the masked explorer for saving them, though they still do not know who stands behind the helmet. Ryuji waves away the gratitude and says he only did what was necessary. Ayano offers a shy thank you as well, while the women mention that Tanaka and the other escorts bought time for the students to escape. Ryuji begins assessing the remaining drops and survivors. He divides the dragon's materials among 4 participating parties, even though the women insist he earned everything. Ryuji treats the rewards as compensation for their effort, while Isabella feels she has seen his eyes somewhere before. When Ryuji questions the division, the others explain that shared rewards prevent disputes between parties that fought along the same route. Greed can turn allies against one another faster than any monster. Their explanation reminds Ryuji of Daenerys' warning that humans are sometimes more troublesome than beasts. A dungeon victory can easily become another battle once treasure appears. Ryuji tells them the dungeon core will be registered through the guild within 24 hours and suggests leaving the remaining items behind. Wu immediately asks for one souvenir, and Ayano quietly agrees. Isabella also wants a memento, partly because she follows the Dungeon Exploration Information Channel, and regrets not expressing her gratitude properly. The request makes her unexpectedly nervous. Ryuji finally realizes that all 3 women are genuine viewers of his channel. Aside from Kijima, they are the first fans he has met face to face, and the discovery leaves him deeply moved. Ryuji offers the women first choice from the divided rewards, and their excitement becomes contagious. Ayano asks Wu to share storage space, only for them to discover that the item does not fit normally. After adjusting the division, the materials settle correctly, and everyone thanks Ryuji again. He understands their random enthusiasm more than he wants to admit, so the awkward tension finally begins to fade. Looking at Isabella closely, Ryuji remembers passing her outside the chairman's office. Her dramatic beauty and polished presence make her seem more like an anime heroine than an ordinary transfer student. Hanfa casually reveals that Isabella constantly talks about the channel and even imitates its advice during training. Ryuji asks whether they ignored his warning against entering during the shuffle. The women explain that the special class had not originally planned to dive, but someone at the academy encouraged them to take advantage of the event. Their story points toward the principal and vice principal. Earlier, the principal had told the special class that random shuffle time was a rare opportunity to prove their superiority and gather treasures unavailable under normal conditions. He framed the expedition as a challenge to silence adults who doubted the students' abilities, promising that exceptional performance would be reflected in their grades. Pride did the rest. Ayano and Wu now suspect the principal deliberately pushed the class into danger. As they describe the meeting, Ryuji senses a strangely familiar presence connected to the scheme. The women explain that the special class is divided into competing factions, shaped by family, nationality, and academy politics. The principal exploited those rivalries, knowing pride would push the students deeper. Isabella finds it difficult to believe students would risk their lives over such divisions, but Ryuji remembers how power struggles grew even during crises in the other world. Conflict does not disappear simply because monsters exist. Relieved that the women were manipulated rather than openly malicious, Ryuji still warns them never to repeat such recklessness. A large group of students nearly died because adults treated the dungeon like a political game. He tells them that levels cannot solve everything and that high numbers do not automatically make someone righteous or invincible. Skill, judgment, teamwork, and luck can matter more than official rankings. Ryuji recognizes their advanced classes and disciplined training, but insists that even talented adventurers must avoid trials they cannot recover from. One mistake in a dungeon does not always leave a second chance. Isabella, Wu, and Ayano absorb the lecture in stunned silence, suddenly feeling like children before an experienced veteran. His words carry the weight of countless battles they know nothing about. When they ask how he identified their jobs, Ryuji explains that equipment, movement, and mana patterns reveal more than a status window. The accuracy of his observations shocks them again. Only after finishing does Ryuji realize he has been delivering an overly dramatic speech. Embarrassed, he folds his arms and waits for the return route, wondering why he cannot stop sounding like an old hero. Isabella, Hanfa, and Ayano invite Ryuji to meet again, but embarrassment overwhelms him after the long lecture. He uses magic to escape before they can continue. Back home, Ryuji hides beneath the covers and avoids the internet, convinced he made a fool of himself. Proto listens while Tanaka later reports the entire incident to the principal and vice principal, who find it far too amusing. The next day, Ryuji meets Yamada at a game convention and briefly enjoys an ordinary teenage outing. Yamada excitedly explains new releases, unaware that Ryuji spent the previous day rescuing students from a dragon. The convention ends peacefully, and random shuffle time finally concludes that night. Ueno Dungeon returns to its normal structure, leaving the academy to count the consequences. Every student who entered during the restricted period receives a formal warning and 1-week suspension. Ryuji uses the unexpected free time to catch up on manga and rest after the exhausting operation. 1 week later, Hanfa demonstrates the magical prosthetic arm she has used since losing an arm in a battle before the current school arc. The shuffle caused no amputation, but the crisis made her reconsider how recklessly she relies on the replacement. Wu admits that surviving the shuffle forced her to reconsider how recklessly she fought. Ayano reminds her that everyone escaped because others refused to abandon them, and gratitude matters more than wounded pride. Ken argues that some adventurers kept demanding more battles even after being rescued, refusing to accept responsibility for their injuries. Wu tells him to stop blaming himself, but the guilt remains. Wu leaves the classroom and announces that she is heading back to the dungeon. Ken has heard that she was removed from her former party, and Ayano watches her go with quiet concern. Before Wu can disappear alone, Ken calls after her and suggests they explore together. She pauses, then accepts the invitation with allowing someone else to share the burden for once. At home, Ryuji wonders why his grades remain strange, despite the recent rescue. Proto suggests checking the Academy's scoring system, especially after Tanaka mentioned that achievement points can be assigned manually. Tanaka explains that class placement combines public evaluation, gathered materials, practical results, and several hidden factors. The more Ryuji listens, the more the system feels designed to produce a specific outcome. Ryuji consults Kojima, who researches the Academy's registration, funding, patents, and management structure. She discovers that Chairman Iwaki is deeply connected to the institution's foundation. Kojima explains that Chairman Iwaki publicly promotes supporting the next generation of adventurers. But the Academy also controls valuable equipment, training methods, and resource access. Whoever manages those systems holds enormous power. The investigation reveals that Iwaki Industries processes rare magic stones and develops advanced dungeon machinery. Kojima suspects the chairman is using knowledge brought from another world to build an industrial empire. Ryuji thanks Kojima for the careful work, and they shake hands before parting. He leaves reassured by her competence, while Kojima quietly stares at the hand he touched. Back at school, Kyoko furiously questions the latest promotions. Her party sold more materials to the public buyback station than several students who advanced, yet she remained in a lower class. Her classmates reveal that the promoted students are children of powerful executives and receive obvious special treatment. Kyoko feels like a fool for believing effort alone would determine the rankings. Ryuji finds Kyoko after the argument and asks what happened. She snaps at him with their old familiarity, while he notices both her changed uniform and how deeply the unfair results have hurt her. The surrounding students warn Ryuji that Kyoko is in a terrible mood, but assassin Tanaka arrives and addresses him respectfully. Kyoko immediately notices that Ryuji's position has changed since they last spoke. Tanaka says the chairman wants to meet, and the class begins whispering about why a level 26 assassin personally escorts someone from Class E. Kyoko watches in stunned silence. The contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. Ryuji is officially jobless and supposedly unconnected, yet the chairman's closest staff treat him as an important figure. Kyoko wonders what has been hidden from her. Chairman Iwaki thanks Ryuji for ensuring that no students died during random shuffle time and offers him a reward. Ryuji jokingly asks to redo his first day, but the chairman cannot grant that miracle. Instead, Iwaki gives him a prototype mobile scout developed under a government request. The device displays level and job information above a target, allowing users to read status data without touching them. Ryuji tries the prototype scout and sees status information projected through a pair of glasses. The device correctly identifies Tanaka's assassin class and even displays Iwaki's hidden title, proving the technology works. Iwaki then reveals why he needed Ryuji's help. The principal and vice principal falsified achievements to promote children of influential politicians and executives. He intends to confront them before the corruption spreads further. Ryuji activates the scout again and follows Iwaki and Tanaka toward the meeting. The strange readings around the administration suggest that the problem runs deeper than simple favoritism. Inside the principal's office, Iwaki asks the two administrators to explain themselves directly. Their polite expressions barely hide the contempt beneath the surface. The principal threatens to use government connections to revoke the school's accreditation and cripple its funding if Iwaki interferes. Ryuji apologizes for interrupting, then demands an honest answer while there is still time. The officials laugh and ask whether Iwaki truly believes education is the Academy's purpose. With control over dungeons, infrastructure, and transport, they see students as assets to be managed for profit. Ryuji and Tanaka listen as the administrators openly discuss money, influence, and the value of obedient adventurers. The language makes their intentions unmistakable. The principal finally says it plainly. The Adventurer High School exists to produce the next generation of resource-gathering slaves. In their minds, citizens are merely tools for extracting dungeon wealth. The corrupt administrators explain that upper-class students are trained as visible representatives, while lower-class citizens are easier to manipulate when resources become scarce. To them, every student is merely a product, with a different purpose. They admit the system is designed to make adventurers risk their lives while the powerful purchase the resulting resources cheaply. Before leaving, they mock Ryuji and recommend that he prepare proper equipment if he ever enters a real dungeon. Ryuji answers that he is not a hero anymore and does not care about their class divisions, but the rankings they falsified must be corrected. Every student deserves the results they actually earned. Iwaki then subjects the administrators to a terrifying dungeon illusion, surrounding them with monsters and collapsing corridors. The men who treated danger like a business model immediately lose their composure, convinced they are about to die. The principal and vice principal scream for help and beg the approaching creature to stop. Their confidence vanishes the moment they experience the fear imposed on their students. Wu, Ken, and the others appear within the staged crisis and drive the monster back, making the rescue feel completely real. The corrupt officials collapse in shock as the illusion ends. The students scold the men for underestimating dungeons and risking lives for profit. Still trembling, the administrators thank everyone for saving them, unaware that their own words and reactions have been recorded. News soon reports that the principal and vice principal were arrested and taken to hospital after confessing. Random shuffle time ends without deaths and with only minor new injuries, while Iwaki ensures the corruption case cannot be buried. After the academy scandal finally settles, Ryuji visits Kyoko's home to return the manga he borrowed, only to be greeted by her unusually serious aunt. Her aunt accepts the books and quietly reveals that Kyoko has shut herself inside and refuses to see anyone. Ryuji tries to leave, but she calls him back, apologizing for the trouble. The woman admits that Kyoko has always been bright yet difficult, then asks Ryuji to remain her friend. Something in her worried smile makes him pause. Once they return home, Proto remarks that Kyoko's aunt is far sharper than she appears. Ryuji agrees, though he complains that dealing with a girl who treats him like an annoying little brother is exhausting. Lying back on his bed, Ryuji realizes Kyoko was never quite this hostile before. The real change began after she awakened the adventurer trait. Proto explains that the same phenomenon occurred in the other world, where only a small fraction possessed the trait, yet roughly 1 in 10 of them eventually lost control of their minds. The reason is simple and terrifying. Levels, skills, and growing strength make adventurers feel fundamentally superior to ordinary people. Some turn violent, some become criminals, and others descend into the dungeons never to return. Kyoko may be heading down that road. Proto warns that modern Japan is already showing the same symptoms, citing the adventurer who murdered someone on the first floor. In game terms, such people are killers who hunt other players, or lure monsters toward them. Ryuji recalls that adventurers in the other world were treated as chosen beings, but that privilege came with a duty to return dungeon resources to society. Those who abused their power were punished without mercy. Elsewhere, Kunimi's company president finishes an expedition inside Ueno Park Dungeon, where deeper floors offer better gems and efficiency. On the way back, his group hears a gang threatening someone nearby. A low-level woman is being robbed by several adventurers who know she cannot resist them. The company president, Kunimi, and their companions move toward the commotion before it becomes worse. The company president steps between the thieves and their victim, ordering them to back away. The gang laughs at the apparently ordinary middle-aged man, assuming he must be harmless because he lacks the adventurer trait. The victim refuses to surrender loot she gathered through her own effort, so the thugs turn violent and beat anyone who challenges them. Confident that strength places them above the law, they do not realize a lesson is coming. Moments later, the attackers are sprawled across the floor. Though bruised, the company president calmly checks on the woman, while his allies confirm that none of her wounds are serious. The rescued adventurer is too angry to thank him, insisting he nearly ignored the attack at first. Kunimi thanks his boss instead, while everyone agrees to leave before more trouble arrives. Still furious, the woman demands to know why criminals can act so openly. The company president explains that experienced adventurers quickly pass into deeper floors, allowing predators to strike near the entrance where few strong people remain. He explains that the entrance is normally the safest part of a dungeon, but violent adventurers can destroy that safety. The rescued woman worries she can no longer earn money from slimes, leaving the group with no simple solution. As they walk away, Kunimi wonders what became of the masked man who once saved him and his boss. Meanwhile, the woman decides to keep hunting slimes for Sheila, despite finding the other adventurers unbearable. Back at school, Ryuji arrives in a formal uniform for the newly reorganized term. His transformed appearance immediately catches the attention of a female student watching from nearby. In Equipment Storage C, acting principal Tanaka explains the class reshuffle. Although he is a level 26 assassin with a teaching license, Chairman Iwaki appointed him while the former administration's falsified records are investigated. Tanaka reveals that Kyoko Mitsuhashi may advance from Class B to Class A, though he cannot disclose personal details. Ryuji accepts the explanation and thanks him for the warning. The chairman then offers to buy medicinal moss at 4 times the public rate if Ryuji can supply a meaningful quantity. Ryuji casually asks whether Iwaki wants enough material for 100,000 potions. Tanaka is stunned when Ryuji says he can immediately prepare ingredients for 5 million potions. The absurd stockpile makes the supposed collection enthusiast look less like a student and more like a national resource depot. Ryuji proposes that Iwaki handle production, sales, and distribution so affordable medicine can reach both adventurers and traitless laborers. Iwaki instantly sees the commercial potential, while payment is left to future planning. Ryuji enters Class 1E and meets Teacher Sato, a cheerful Level 2 thief, serving as homeroom instructor. The room is filled with Level 2 and Level 3 scholarship students who mock the lone no-job newcomer. Sato silences the class with a hypnosis skill and begins the lesson. Ryuji notices something strange. Despite attending an elite adventurer school for half a year, almost none of these students has gained a level. When asked why they avoid the dungeon, one student admits he stays home watching videos, while another says dungeon exploration is dangerous and he might die. Sato reassures them that Level 2 already makes them stronger than ordinary people. Ryuji tests the class with a darker question, asking who has ever taken something from a person without that adventurer trait. Almost every hand rises. His suspicion is confirmed. Watching Sato excuse their behavior, Ryuji understands why the supposedly elite students never advanced. Instead of confronting them openly, he decides to teach the class in a way they will never forget. He activates Level Drain 2, a rare spell obtained from a Ueno Park dungeon boss. The magic can strip levels and adventurer traits from weak targets, though powerful adventurers would normally resist it. Under hypnosis, Ryuji tells the students that their traits will be restored only when they become decent people, worthy of being adventurers. 5 other offenders currently inside a dungeon are punished as well, and everyone will forget his role once the spell breaks. At Ueno Park Dungeon, the same gang that robbed weaker explorers suddenly feels its strength vanish. Their level displays disappear completely. Panic hits at once. Without their traits, even nearby slimes become lethal. The former bullies flee toward the exit, while Kunimi's company president watches the strange reversal unfold. Ryuji decides the Class E students can endure life without their stolen privilege, yet he knows other offenders may deserve different treatment. He has no interest in being celebrated as a hero. He only wants a peaceful world where he can enjoy the things he loves. The next day, Proto identifies the obvious problem. Across the entire world, only Ryuji's Class E and the 5 dungeon criminals lost their adventurer traits, while Ryuji himself remained untouched, making him the most suspicious person alive. Ryuji immediately regrets acting so broadly, but Proto insists removing their traits was lenient compared with punishment in the other world. Even so, the coincidence must be handled carefully before investigators connect it to him. Ryuji decides to extend level drain to thieves across the country, teleporting from dungeon to dungeon so the pattern will be harder to trace. Proto jokes that he sounds like a lumber thief hiding one tree inside an entire forest, then reminds him to record footage for the channel. DTJC soon uploads a warning that robbery near dungeon entrances is still a crime, and that offenders may mysteriously lose their adventurer traits. Ryuji hopes the channel's immense influence will make the phenomenon seem like a natural consequence. Yet the solution leaves him uneasy. Even if the victims were protected, stripping traits and then releasing a cover-up video feels wrong. So Proto suggests restoring everyone and abandoning the upload. Proto bluntly says the world matters less than Ryuji's happiness. Moved by the loyalty behind those words, Ryuji asks him to publish the warning anyway and leaves the rest in his hands. Ryuji thanks Proto and resolves to keep trying a little longer. He may not want the title of hero, but he cannot ignore a world sliding toward the same disaster he witnessed before. At the chairman's office, Iwaki thanks Ryuji for the medicinal moss and raises a wider crisis. Public trust in adventurers is collapsing as more of them turn into thieves. Chairman Iwaki asks whether Ryuji can build dungeon security cameras, but the required materials are too rare for continuous coverage. Ryuji instead proposes official patrol volunteers linked to appraisal and resource buybacks. Iwaki promises to support the plan and asks Ryuji to mention it on DTJC so other nations may imitate the model. Then the chairman casually asks whether Ryuji caused Class E to lose its traits. Ryuji denies it. Chairman Iwaki accepts the answer, reasoning that the students probably received divine punishment. Relieved by his trust, Ryuji agrees to keep cooperating whenever either of them encounters trouble. At Ueno Park Dungeon's new public purchase office, Taira spends 60,000 yen on proper equipment and admits her savings are nearly gone. Kunimi's company president is surprised that she has chosen to join his small party. Taira orders Kunimi and the others toward the slime hunting grounds with newfound confidence. Though her sudden change catches them off guard, they agree to follow her lead. Kunimi and the company president hold the monster's attention while Taira attacks from behind, turning the simple formation into an effective team. Afterward, Kunimi apologizes for dismissing her during their previous encounter. Taira brushes off the apology and admits she once abandoned a senior adventurer herself. When the company president asks why she chose this life, she explains that even a modest trait can earn more than an ordinary salary. She snaps at the company president for lecturing her, then voices the anger beneath her attitude. Honest adventurers struggle, while lucky scumbags abuse their gifts, making her wish a god would take those abilities away. Their discussion turns to elderly people who receive traits, yet never enter a dungeon. Taira argues that such power should instead go to those willing to use it, but a stranger suddenly interrupts. A hooded old woman appears and asks whether Taira wants an adventurer trait. Her eerie smile and perfectly timed offer make the entire group suspect a fortune-telling scam. The woman claims that possessing the trait would let Taira level up and hunt more than slimes, then offers to sell one for 100,000 yen. Kunimi immediately calls the proposal suspicious. A few hours earlier, at the Adventurer High School, Hanfa and a classmate discussed DTJC's latest video. They wondered what truly happened to the stolen traits and whether the disappearance could spread further. The girls recall Ryuji's claim that only people who robbed ordinary citizens were affected. Although that explanation should be reassuring, the strange precision of the phenomenon leaves them uneasy. They hope the missing traits are gone for good. Yet one student wonders whether such abilities can truly vanish, or whether they simply reappear somewhere else. The question lingers. Back near Ueno Park Dungeon, the old woman insists she planned to sell the trait only because Taira works hard. Taira and her companions remain convinced that the 100,000 yen offer is a trap. The stranger tests their judgment by raising the imaginary price to 100 million yen. Even that, she says, would be cheap for a genuine adventurer trait, and the group realizes she understands exactly how valuable such power would be. Taira privately agrees that a real trait could be worth far more than 100 million, though she cannot afford it. The old woman then calls herself a messenger of the dungeon god, tasked with giving traits to motivated people for a fixed price of 100,000 yen. She refuses to offer the gift for free, arguing that humans do not value what costs them nothing. Then she gives Taira only 5 seconds to decide. As the countdown begins, Kunimi repeats that the story must be a scam, while the company president remembers that dungeons themselves once sounded impossible. The impossible has already become real once. The old woman reaches too and asks Taira what she thinks. Taira knows buying would be foolish, but she also knows that discovering the offer was genuine afterward would haunt her forever. At 3, indecision grips the group. Kunimi urges everyone to ignore the stranger because slime materials are losing value, and 100,000 yen is still precious. When the count reaches 5, the company president accepts the offer and asks the woman to sell the trait to him instead. Kunimi cannot understand why his normally cautious boss would trust an obvious scammer. The company president leaves to withdraw the money, while Kunimi promises to watch the stranger. As the others walk off, the disguised Ryuji quietly complains about how rare truly remarkable women are in this world. The stranger asks whether Taira carries 100,000 yen. But Taira admits she spent everything on equipment. She bitterly recalls being deceived by a fake video, caught in a robbery, and then confronted by another suspicious woman in a single day. Taira asks why any god would allow children to be born into cruel and hopeless circumstances. The old woman replies that the god she means may not be the same one Taira blames, then asks to hear her story. Taira begins explaining how her life diverged from what she once imagined. Beneath the old woman's disguise, Ryuji feels the weight of every word and wonders how he became trapped in this bizarre role. As Taira speaks, Ryuji remembers his own miserable fate beneath the disguise. He was dragged to another world, forced to defeat a demon king, and repeatedly came close to death. When he returned, his parents died almost immediately. The company president returns with enough money to buy traits for all 3 party members, apologizing for the delay, and placing 300,000 yen in the stranger's hand. Taira realizes the men pooled their emergency savings. Taira is shocked they would risk the entire party fund for a woman who joined only that day. Kunimi argues that if their boss is being scammed, it would be shameful to let him suffer alone. Unable to hide her tears, Taira looks away while the company president and Kunimi smile, knowingly. For the first time in a long while, she feels that someone has chosen to stand beside her. The old woman accepts the 300,000 yen and declares that a proper payment has been received. Light gathers around the party as she invokes Lunamaria's blessing. Marks appear on their hands, revealing newly granted level 1 classes, warrior, priest, and mage. The impossible offer was real. Kunimi initially suspects hypnosis because the marks are visible only to their owner. Taira settles the argument by casting fire with her new magic. There is no trick. Before vanishing, the old woman warns them to use their traits responsibly, or the gifts will disappear. She also demands absolute secrecy, leaving the stunned party to wonder whether they truly met a messenger of the gods. Ryuji returns home, after secretly selling reassigned traits, to 50 carefully selected people, and depositing the proceeds into a dedicated account. He orders Proto to donate the earnings to Chairman Iwaki's relief program. Proto says he has never heard of Lunamaria's blessing, so Ryuji admits it is original magic built from Level Drain 2. He named it after the true goddess of the other world and designed it to reject anyone carrying malicious intent. Then suddenly remembers he forgot to record his anime. At Supply Warehouse C, the promised 100,000 bundles of medicinal herbs are confirmed and payment is completed. Principal Tanaka notices Ryuji's distraction, prompting him to ask what will happen to Class E after losing its traits. Tanaka explains that losing a trait does not automatically mean expulsion, especially when no wrongdoing can be proven. The curriculum will be adjusted so the affected students can train as ordinary adventurers without relying on supernatural advantages. When practical slime training is announced, the former Class E students grow frightened and withdraw from school. Teacher Sato resigns as well. Ryuji suspects they fear meeting the people they once robbed. Tanaka then reveals that Ryuji has been promoted into a newly created special class and gives him the key card for its secured classroom. He is the only student who qualified. Ryuji smiles, recognizing the result he expected, while Tanaka privately wonders whether the boy truly is a former hero returned from another world. Something about Ryuji's calm confidence feels unmistakable. Back home, Proto congratulates his master and admits Tanaka was easy to read. Ryuji complains about the attention, but Proto is delighted that someone has finally recognized him. Ryuji thanks Proto and expects the day to end peacefully, only for Kyoko to call repeatedly. The moment he answers, he hears panic in her voice. Kyoko says her mother suddenly collapsed and asks whether she should call an ambulance. Ryuji tells her to stay calm, teleports invisibly to the house, and rushes inside before emergency help can arrive. Kyoko's aunt points him toward the back room, where her mother lies motionless on the floor. Ryuji immediately moves to examine her. Using enhanced hearing, Ryuji realizes the woman's heart has stopped. A normal potion already failed, so he reaches for a high-grade medicine, despite knowing the situation may expose his powers. The potion revives Kyoko's mother, leaving Kyoko overwhelmed with relief. When Ryuji asks what happened, she admits her mother kept lecturing her until Kyoko angrily ordered her to be quiet. Then the woman collapsed. Ryuji checks Kyoko's level and learns she has reached level 11. He warns that even an ordinary person could die if she releases uncontrolled killing intent, but Kyoko denies doing anything and insists the collapse happened on its own. Kyoko lashes out, calling Ryuji childish, and mocking him for watching anime despite being an adult. For the first time, he looks at his childhood friend with genuine coldness. Kyoko keeps arguing that the details do not matter, but Ryuji refuses to excuse her. He says he came to save her mother, not Kyoko, and tells her never to contact him again before walking out. On the way home, Ryuji struggles to accept how cruel Kyoko has become. He had believed in her more than he realized, and the betrayal deepens the distrust of women already rooted in his past. He needs distance now. Ryuji retreats to the 200th floor of Ueno Park Dungeon and sits among enormous monsters while hidden. Compared with Kyoko's hostility, even the hulking beasts seem strangely adorable and calming. The encounter makes him wonder whether he has always unconsciously suppressed his own killing intent. Curious, he releases a fraction of it and watches the nearby monsters freeze in terror. The result is catastrophic. Every monster on the floor dies instantly, proving that level 1503 killing intent alone is enough to wipe out an army without a single attack. Ryuji reminds himself that this is not the moment to worry about Kyoko. He must first learn never to release that pressure by an act. On the next scheduled school day, Principal Tanaka calls him over, but says he cannot discuss a certain private matter. Tanaka hands Ryuji the special class key card and explains how to reach the secured room. Ryuji finds the restricted corridor and approaches the magically sealed entrance. The door is designed to respond to magical power when a registered card is touched against it. Ryuji follows the instructions, but the lock repeatedly flashes an error and refuses to open. A cheerful female student appears behind him and notices the malfunction. Offering to inspect the problem, she asks to borrow Ryuji's card and steps closer to the sealed classroom. The girl recognizes Ryuji as the student promoted from Class E and introduces herself as Wu. When he mentions that Principal Tanaka personally assigned him to the special class, her expression changes with sudden interest. Speaking Chinese so nearby students cannot easily follow, Wu explains that the card does not read fingerprints. Ryuji must press it against the panel and channel his magic through it to complete registration. The door opens immediately. Ryuji thanks her, and Wu offers to send the cloak he once lent her to the cleaners before returning it. He insists the cloak was a gift, causing her to blush as she realizes he has remembered her after all. Wu tearfully calls Ryuji her lifesaver, saying she would have died during the random shuffle incident without him. Her sincere gratitude catches him off guard, and he cannot help thinking she looks unexpectedly adorable. Ryuji quickly denies being the masked rescuer, claiming he has never even seen a baby dragon. Wu agrees to keep quiet, but warns that Ayano and Isabella may recognize his voice, forcing him to consider disguising it in future videos. Inside the special classroom, Ryuji notices that Kyoko's cruelty has made the other girls seem even kinder by comparison. Before he can settle in, a tall male student mocks the former Class E boy for entering among the elite. The challenger introduces himself as Ken Takeshi, a level 40 adventurer, ranked 7th in the world. He corners Ryuji, demands to know his level, and accuses him of entering the special class through connections with Principal Tanaka. Wu tells Ken to stop provoking him, but Ryuji calmly says his placement came from skill rather than favoritism. Ken responds that words mean nothing and demands proof through strength. Ken proposes a simple test. Ryuji should direct his killing intent at him. If Ryuji truly belongs in the class, that pressure alone should reveal the difference. Impatient, Ken orders him to hurry and asks whether he is frightened. Ryuji pauses, measuring how much power a level 40 student might survive. Ryuji reminds Ken that the school, not Ken, made the promotion decision and that he does not need a classmate's approval. Ken's pride only hardens as he realizes the new student refuses to submit. Ken calls him a coward and claims his weak face proves he has never properly explored a dungeon. The insult strikes far deeper than Ken understands. Ryuji's expression turns cold as Ken sneers that a coward like him should stay home and watch anime. Memories of Kyoko using the same contemptuous words ignite the anger he had barely restrained. Ryuji agrees to the test and warns Ken not to complain if he dies. For the first time, the confident world-ranked adventurer feels genuine fear. Ken insists no killing intent from someone at Ryuji's supposed level could kill him. Ryuji decides to begin with the weakest pressure possible, though even that requires careful adjustment. Ken continues taunting him for enjoying a comfortable school life surrounded by girls. Ryuji bristles at the assumption, thinking that the only heroines he truly admires belong in anime, not in this troublesome reality. Ryuji releases a whisper of killing intent. The air changes instantly, and Ken sees the shadow of death looming directly beside him. Ken barely withstands the first pulse and tries to laugh it off, while several classmates become sick merely from the leaking pressure. Ryuji states that this was only the weakest setting. Ken repeats that real men never run from unpleasant things, unwittingly challenging someone who endured 10 years in another world and personally defeated a demon king. Ryuji has never survived by running away. A stronger wave crashes over Ken, leaving him pale and trembling. He finally admits that Ryuji possesses real skill and asks him to stop, but Ryuji quietly notes that 2 levels of the test remain. Ken once again claims, Ryuji looks like someone who has never explored a dungeon. Ryuji's anger sharpens into a single question. What could this sheltered student possibly know about him? For 10 years, Ryuji was trapped in another world, diving into lethal dungeons day after day without rest. Ken's 1.5 years of experience cannot compare with the life Ryuji was forced to endure. Even after returning, Ryuji continues exploring so he can create strategy videos that prevent beginners from dying. He considers that duty part of the mission carried by a former hero, even if he never calls himself one. Ken's repeated insults are tolerable, but dismissing Ryuji's entire struggle crosses the line. Wu notices the danger and moves to stop him before the next wave is released. Wu grabs Ryuji's shoulder and tells him the test has gone far enough. Her sudden question about whether he was watching anime snaps him back to himself, and she asks whether he realizes he is losing control. She embraces him from behind and firmly says the confrontation is over. He must not release killing intent again. Ryuji finally recognizes her as Wu, while she declares that both he and Ken have already proven their talent. Ryuji wonders whether he pushed too far, as Ken stands in a dazed, almost blissful state. He calls out to Takeshi, trying to keep the stunned boy conscious. Ken hallucinates his late grandmother, welcoming him from beyond, then begins laughing with tears in his eyes. The surrounding classmates panic, unsure whether his mind has survived the encounter. When Ken regains awareness, he admits the pressure was far more dangerous than expected, and says he has a problem. Ryuji immediately offers healing and tells him to remain still. Ryuji casts a recovery spell that restores Ken completely in an instant. Combined with the earlier killing intent, the extraordinary healing convinces Ken that the newcomer is unquestionably the real thing. Ken apologizes, explaining that he only meant to test Ryuji's ability and ask forgiveness for provoking him. Then he formally welcomes Ryuji into the special class, where the other elite students introduce themselves. The story shifts back to Ueno Park Dungeon, where a different party celebrates reaching the 151st floor and gaining another level. For now, they decide to end the expedition and return safely. After all 3 reach level 4, the company president's party celebrates at a restaurant and plans to move its hunting grounds to the 2nd floor. Taira wants to keep farming easy slimes, but the others explain the custom. The custom exists so beginners at levels 1 to 3 can safely gain experience without veterans taking every monster. Taira reluctantly agrees, and the group decides to study DTJC's 2nd floor guide before returning. Over oversized beef bowls, they praise DTJC's detailed walkthroughs and life-saving advice. With hundreds of dungeon guides already available, the channel has become indispensable to ordinary adventurers. Taira remembers how fake guides once flooded the internet before DTJC appeared, and her best friend died after trusting one. The fraudsters were arrested, while the company president admits he nearly met the same fate. Taira finally asks who is behind DTJC. The company president and Kunimi admit that countless rumors exist, but the creator's identity remains unknown. One wild theory claims DTJC is an alien, which makes Kunimi choke on his food. Even Taira finds that explanation difficult to swallow. Yet Taira points out that DTJC knows far too much about every dungeon and displays impossible strength. She jokes that he may come from a planet made entirely of dungeons, though the idea is not completely absurd anymore. Kunimi notes that the helmet looks alien, but the company president argues that DTJC behaves like an ordinary human student. The voice, uniform clues, and filming locations suggest someone from an adventurer high school. Because most early videos were recorded in Ueno Park Dungeon, the trail points toward their own school. Its special class gathers the country's strongest young adventurers, giving Taira even more reason to investigate. If DTJC belongs to that class, the most obvious candidate is Japan's highest-ranked student. Kunimi searches the global rankings and finds Ken Takeshi, the level 40 high priest ranked 7th in the world. At school, Ken and Ryuji have already begun speaking casually after their dangerous confrontation. Ken insists Ryuji use his first name, since stiff surnames make their new friendship feel distant. Ryuji is startled because first-name friendship feels like a scene from a school anime. Ken explains that outgoing classmates use given names all the time, while Ryuji's years away have left him badly disconnected from modern social habits. Ryuji awkwardly agrees to call him Takeshi and offers his own name in return. The relaxed exchange softens the entire classroom, and several students quietly decide the intimidating newcomer is surprisingly cute. Hanfa steps forward with a blush and asks Ryuji to call her by her given name as well. The class immediately teases them both, leaving Ryuji embarrassed and Hanfa delighted. Takeshi invites Ryuji to explore a dungeon together. Ryuji worries that their enormous level difference will make the trip pointless, and that filming videos leaves little free time, but his introverted refusal fails. He accepts. Meanwhile, Taira presents Ken Takeshi as the likely identity of DTJC. The company president studies the photograph, but feels that the face does not match the masked rescuer he remembers. The company president instead recalls the quiet boy who covered his face after saving the party. The build, movements, and restrained presence make Ryuji Furuya a more convincing candidate. That mysterious boy destroyed 2 slimes from a distance, healed the company president instantly, and knew every hunting ground detail. Only DTJC should possess that combination of knowledge and power. The problem is the rankings. Isabella holds the official top position, while dungeon scanners automatically record every entrant's stats, making it seemingly impossible for DTJC to hide. Ryuji's displayed level remains 1, placing him near the bottom. Taira admits Ken has the right status, but none of DTJC's personality. He acts far too loudly and aggressively, so she asks whether another special class student could fit the role. Kunimi introduces a new theory: DTJC might be a woman. The channel's gentle wording, nervous pauses, and lack of rough language give the masked explorer an unexpectedly cute impression. That possibility leads to the world's #1 ranked adventurer, Holy Knight Isabella Raine Clooney. Her strength and public image make her the most obvious female candidate. Taira lights up because she is a devoted Isabella fan, following every post and strategy video. Isabella is the same age, born into nobility, and unusually generous with useful information. Details that make the theory sound plausible. The party briefly imagines Isabella hiding her face beneath DTJC's helmet, but Taira notes that disguising the rest of her famous figure would be much harder. The theory survives, though only barely. They acknowledge other possibilities, including a time traveler or another hero returned from a different world, but the distribution platform still protects DTJC's identity. In the end, they agree that solving the mystery is part of the fun, while the channel continues acting like a superhero. Ryuji returns home confused by the sudden first-name friendship with Takeshi. Proto reminds him that Princess Dinaris and Kyoko once addressed him just as closely, making him realize he has forgotten how ordinary relationships work. A message from Hanfa suddenly arrives through line. Proto reacts with immediate alarm at the sight of a 3-dimensional girl contacting his master directly. Proto accuses Ryuji of secretly communicating with a real girl other than Yamada, but Ryuji insists Hanfa is different. She only wants to discuss something important, and she was the one who stopped him from seriously hurting Takeshi. Proto asks to meet this new benefactor someday, and Ryuji promises an introduction later. Hanfa's message requests an urgent private conversation, so he leaves for a nearby family restaurant. Hanfa arrives in casual clothes and apologizes for calling him out so late. Ryuji is momentarily distracted by how different she looks outside her uniform before joining her at the drink bar. Ryuji worries that a high school girl should not be wandering at night. But Hanfa reminds him she is ranked second in the world and fears almost no one besides Isabella. Then she asks whether he has spoken with Ayano or Isabella about DTJC. Ryuji says he has neither told them anything nor even met them at school. Hanfa accepts the answer, yet the silence leaves her uneasy, as though a hidden problem is already approaching. Hanfa finally explains what happened earlier that day. On Ueno Park Dungeon's 44th floor, Ayano and Isabella defeated the Queen Killer Ant and broke the world record for that floor boss. Their victory is officially recorded, yet Hanfa notes that DTJC's achievements are excluded because the channel never submits floor boss materials for public verification. The missing records make the masked adventurer even harder to identify. During the celebration, Isabella mentions hearing that Hanfa recently walked to school with Ryuji Furuya, the former Class E student. She has seen him several times and sensed overwhelming strength, making her almost certain he is DTJC. Ayano then asks Hanfa about a Tokyo bank account connected to Furuya Project, which the Sanzanin family's financial network had noticed. Tens of billions of yen reportedly enter the account each month. Ayano admits she secretly examined Class E and found only one student named Furuya, whose face and build match the masked creator. Hanfa can no longer deny their conclusion and apologizes for trying to hide it. Back at the restaurant, Hanfa confesses that both girls already know because she is terrible at concealing her thoughts. Ryuji says the answer is practically written across her face, leaving her genuinely worried about how transparent she is. Ryuji remembers that people often told him the same thing as a child, but this is the first time he has heard it since returning older from the other world. The comment awakens an old memory. At an imperial banquet, young Ryuji was scolded for displaying his displeasure so openly before nobles. Princess Daenerys told him to stop worrying about appearances and focus on becoming strong enough to defeat the Demon King. Daenerys then softened, admitting that Ryuji's expressive face was one of the things she liked most about him. Being near him made her feel calm, even when the world demanded impossible composure. Hanfa echoes that forgotten sentiment, saying she likes this honest side of Ryuji because being with him puts her at ease. The resemblance between past and present leaves him speechless, trusting both his intuition and Hanfa's judgment. Ryuji gives her permission to tell Ayano and Isabella the truth. He knows his identity will eventually be exposed once the financial arrangements are finalized, so he wants to prepare rather than keep running. Hanfa thanks him and promises to decide carefully how much to reveal. More than the secret itself, she is moved that Ryuji trusts her enough to place the choice in her hands. When Ryuji returns home, Proto immediately asks whether he enjoyed his date. Ryuji denies that it was romantic, while Proto cheerfully says he is simply glad his master had fun. The next day, Hanfa rejoins Ayano and Isabella on the 44th floor and confirms the truth. Ryuji Furuya is DTJC. Ayano looks unsurprised while Isabella can barely contain her excitement. Hanfa explains that Ryuji personally authorized her to speak, proving how close they have become. Isabella and Ayano exchange meaningful looks, realizing they no longer need to admire him only from a distance. Hanfa tells them that Ryuji saved her during the baby dragon crisis and became her lifesaver. The admiration she once held for DTJC has transformed into something far more personal. Isabella admits she was content merely admiring the mysterious Kiro from afar, but learning that Hanfa has grown close to Ryuji changes everything. She now wants a place beside him as well. Ayano shyly makes the same confession, saying she also wishes to become closer to Furuya's. The three girls call one another by name and recognize that their feelings are no longer a secret. Hanfa declares that, if possible, she wants to become Ryuji's girlfriend. Rather than compete through deception, the girls agree to remain fair, openly pursue him, and accept whatever answer he eventually gives. Far below them on Ueno Park Dungeon's 1000th floor, Ryuji destroys another group of monsters and suddenly feels an unfamiliar irritation in his nose. He suspects dungeon-related magical pollen. Even heroes can suffer allergies. At the Adventurer High School's main gate, Ayano Sanzanin, the level 42 Great Sage ranked second, and Isabella Rene Clooney, the level 44 Holy Knight ranked first, arrive together. Their tense expressions make Hanfa joke that both look frighteningly determined. The moment they hear Ryuji's is already inside, Isabella's composure vanishes and she rushes toward the special classroom. The world's 3 highest-ranked young adventurers gather in one room, astonishing Takeshi and the others. Isabella immediately asks whether she can speak with Ryuji alone about something important. Hanfa asks Takeshi to create a private space, so the high priest activates divine domain. The unique skill seals their conversation away from everyone outside the barrier. Takeshi explains that nothing spoken inside divine domain can leak out. He then tells Wu that Ryuji's killing intent is probably well above level 100, and that despite such power, the boy seems to have almost no close adventurer friends. Ryuji receives praise from countless viewers, but he has fought alone for a very long time, and needs companions who understand the dungeon world. Since they are all 16, Takeshi believes the special class can prevent him from becoming isolated. Hanfa remembers seeing Ryuji walking alone, while everyone else enjoyed the season around him. Though official records call him level 1 with no job, his true level has already climbed beyond 1500. Takeshi warns that Ryuji currently protects humanity because he still cares about people, but a severe betrayal could turn that love into hatred. With such strength, the former hero could become a new demon king. Hanfa recoils at the thought, yet Takeshi reminds her that dungeons themselves were unimaginable only a year and a half earlier. She insists Ryuji will never become a monster, but agrees that someone must remain beside him and watch over his loneliness. Hanfa vows that, whatever happens, she will never allow Ryuji to face everything alone again. Takeshi deactivates divine domain, relieved that he trusted Hanfa, Isabella, and Ayano with his concern. The barrier falls just as another special class student enters, startling Isabella and Ayano. The group exchanges awkward morning greetings while the new arrival wonders why the room's atmosphere feels so intense. Isabella and Ayano continue planning how to approach Ryuji without relying on Hanfa to arrange everything. They insist natural encounters are essential, though the classmates immediately notice that the normally disciplined girls are behaving very strangely. While their classmates marvel at how approachable Isabella and Ayano suddenly seem, the two girls quietly steel themselves their next move. Their excitement is obvious, almost frighteningly so. On his way to the special classroom, Ryuji is congratulated by a former classmate who promises to catch up with him someday. Ryuji responds warmly, then realizes too late that he never learned the boy's name. Ryuji enters the special class through the rear door, immediately drawing Hanfa's startled attention. Ayano greets him with carefully controlled enthusiasm, and Hanfa realizes their plan has finally begun. Isabella wastes no time and invites Ryuji to share a meal with her party. However, he bluntly explains that his schedule is already full this term and turns her down on the spot. The room freezes after the Academy's admired Holy Night is rejected so casually. Isabella is visibly shaken, yet she recovers quickly and changes the request from a social meal to professional guidance for their dungeon party. Ryuji praises their determination, but refuses to provide direct training, recommending his DTJC videos instead. From his perspective, teaching them personally offers no benefit and only creates another obligation. Before Ryuji can leave, Takeshi asks to speak with him privately for a moment. He clearly has something important to correct. Inside Divine Domain, Takeshi warns that Ryuji's harsh refusal made Isabella look publicly humiliated. Since they are friends, he advises Ryuji to decline more carefully and preserve the girl's dignity. Taking that advice seriously, Ryuji apologizes to Isabella and explains why he avoids teaching. Previous students ignored his limits, overworked him, and turned what should have been simple guidance into a complete disaster. He adds that free instruction attracts endless applicants, while rejecting them later damages his reputation and wastes even more time. Teaching classmates would also create resentment. That is why he refuses unpaid requests. Isabella listens without interrupting, then explains that her party genuinely needs his experience to approach the level they admire. Since his time is valuable, she asks him to name a proper fee. Ryuji tries to end the negotiation by demanding 1 billion yen from each person. Surely no student would accept a price that absurd. That is what he assumes. Instead, Isabella, Ayano, and Hanfa call the price surprisingly reasonable and agree without hesitation. Ryuji can only stare. His escape plan has failed completely. The private lessons are officially decided, prompting Takeshi to joke that Ryuji has arranged a harem date. Ryuji is less amused, especially after learning that noble heirs and a Chinese tycoon's daughter consider 1 billion yen affordable. Later at home, Ryuji admits he has no desire to become a dungeon tour guide. Takeshi tells him to refuse if he truly hates the idea, but Ryuji remembers that even powerful adventurers can die the instant they become careless. Soon afterward, Isabella sends an impeccably formal message thanking Ryuji for accepting their request. Beneath the noble wording, her excitement is impossible to hide. Ayano follows with a far more romantic message, telling Ryuji that the moon looks beautiful. Her refined Japanese impresses Takeshi, though Ryuji does not grasp the confession hidden inside the phrase. Ryuji answers literally by saying, "It is raining where he lives." Takeshi watches the entire exchange collapse and quietly notes that Ayano's carefully prepared message has gone completely off track. Hanfa sends the final message, openly declaring how excited she is to explore a dungeon with him, and asking to learn his steel-style figure. Her enthusiasm is direct, energetic, and impossible to misunderstand. Ryuji pauses at the unfamiliar request, then makes his decision. Rather than searching for another excuse, he will train them properly. No half measures. As the training day approaches, Ryuji remembers how Daenerys once stayed beside him when he was trapped in another world's dungeons. She taught him everything he needed to survive. Without Daenerys, Ryuji knows he could never have defeated the Demon King, even after 10 years of effort. Her patient guidance shaped the hero he eventually became. Now the role has reversed. Because Hanfa and the others work harder than almost anyone, Ryuji decides they deserve genuine instruction, and he intends to train them properly. On the 5th day of their dungeon guidance, the girls wait on Ueno Park Dungeon's 44th floor. Ryuji suddenly appears beside them through teleportation, leaving everyone stunned by an ability that should not function there. After confirming with detection that no other adventurers are nearby, Ryuji gathers the party. Their next destination is far deeper, and there is no time for sightseeing. Ryuji reveals the dungeon core he obtained after defeating the dungeon boss, explaining that it allows him to travel freely between floors. Hanfa immediately wants one of her own. He cuts the questions short before curiosity consumes the entire lesson. Answers can wait, training cannot. With a single activation of the core, Ryuji transports everyone to Ueno Park Dungeon's 500th floor. The scenery changes instantly, and so does the pressure in the air. Isabella's party can barely comprehend reaching a floor hundreds of levels beyond their previous limit. Ryuji calmly announces the schedule. Leveling in the morning, then tactical practice somewhere else that afternoon. Their target is a dark ball, an extremely durable monster that never attacks and is therefore safe for controlled training. Isabella volunteers to strike first and asks Ryuji to call her by her first name. Ryuji awkwardly agrees, prompting Hanfa and Ayano to demand the same treatment. In moments, formal surnames disappear, and their teacher is surrounded by 3 very satisfied girls. Isabella draws one of the world's rare mithril swords, while Ryuji multiplies her physical power 16-fold without chanting. Even before the attack begins, the party realizes his magic operates on an entirely different scale. Ryuji warns that the dark ball is extraordinarily tough, and Isabella charges with everything she has. Her empowered slash lands cleanly. The sword does not survive. Although unharmed, Isabella is mortified that the borrowed mithril blade has shattered. She apologizes repeatedly, but Ryuji is more interested in correcting the equipment problem than assigning blame. He replaces it with an orichalcum sword, and layers 6 more buffs onto Isabella, raising her attack power 24 times above normal. The legendary weapon strains her arm, yet it should withstand the next blow. This time, Isabella cleaves through the dark ball in one decisive strike. Experience floods into her body, triggering several consecutive level-ups. It worked. Hanfa eagerly takes her turn with an orichalcum knuckle and 10 stacked enhancements. The immense power feels incredible, and she can barely wait to crush a dark ball herself. Ryuji orders Isabella and Hanfa to keep hunting until their buffs expire, but Ayano presents a different problem. Dark balls resist magical attacks, and she is a great sage whose entire fighting style depends on magic. A few hours earlier at Adventurer High School, another student had unexpectedly encountered Ayano in the hallway. Since dungeon exploration counts as an excused absence, seeing a famous adventurer on campus is surprisingly rare. The students explain that many adventurers attend only mandatory school days and may vanish for long periods. Their conversation quickly abandons academics, however, as everyone gushes over how unbelievably cute Ayano looks in person. The students continue listing Ayano's achievements. Daughter of the prestigious Sanzanin family, former world number 2, and a master of traditional arts. Her cool eyes and long black hair only strengthen her flawless public image. Their praise becomes increasingly enthusiastic, especially when someone mentions Ayano's enormous worldwide following. One boy insists her appearance is not what he admires most, though everyone has heard that speech from him countless times. What truly impresses them is Ayano's composure. During random shuffle, she reportedly faced unknown monsters without losing her calm, repeatedly casting iceberg while protecting her teammates, as though the impossible situation were routine. Back on the 500th floor, Ayano asks Ryuji to repeat himself because the problem is difficult to accept. Dark balls completely resist magic, making her great sage abilities useless against them. Ryuji remains unconcerned and says he already has a solution. Ayano's fascination deepens. Even an obstacle designed to shut down her entire class appears manageable to him. He hands her an orichalcum staff that converts magical energy into physical striking power. With it, even a magic-focused adventurer can damage a dark ball directly. Channeling power through the unfamiliar weapon is awkward, but Ayano successfully makes the conversion on her first attempt. Ryuji offers restrained praise. It actually worked. The next step is far less elegant. She must stab the dark ball's central core with the staff. Ayano struggles with the physical technique, and Ryuji tells her to ignore everything except the target at the center. Ayano finally drives the staff into the core and destroys the monster. Her normally composed expression breaks into pure delight, revealing a far more emotional side than Ryuji expected. The victories begin stacking one after another, and Ayano receives her first level up almost immediately. Ryuji realizes that the graceful, distant genius is much more expressive when she is genuinely excited. Before long, Ryuji's prototype scouter shows Ayano has reached level 71, but her mana is completely drained. He produces a supply of MP potions and orders her to keep drinking while the hunting continues. Ayano hesitates because MP potions are normally rare and expensive, yet Ryuji explains that deeper floors drop them frequently, and that he can craft them himself. She gratefully accepts the seemingly limitless supply. The girls race through levels while enjoying every second of the hunt. For Ryuji, however, the real trial begins now. Enduring hours of repetitive farming, while remaining alert enough to supervise them. Sleepiness attacks almost immediately, but Ryuji has prepared for that possibility. He opens his item box and pulls out comfortable furniture, determined to stay one step ahead of boredom. Settling among the harmless dark balls, he uses the downtime to catch up on unread magic books and promises himself the latest volume of the Ninth Sun afterward. The others continue hunting until their buffs expire. 1 hour later, Ryuji calls a tea break and checks everyone with the scouter. They have already climbed to around level 200, so he serves tea that restores the stamina and mana consumed by rapid growth. He compares sudden leveling to a game where maximum HP rises, but the current gauge remains half empty. Regular breaks prevent injuries, and his original plan is to reach level 300 before practicing movement and new skills elsewhere. Instead, Isabella proposes spending the afternoon on more dark ball hunting. Without Ryuji, they cannot farm this efficiently, and the higher their levels rise, the less burden they will place on him later. Hanfa and Ayano agree for the same personal reason. Each wants to become strong enough to support Ryuji, rather than remain someone he must constantly protect. Their sincerity strikes him harder than expected. Ryuji clears his throat and accepts, reasoning that clients paying 1 billion yen deserve his best effort. However, their rapid progress has created a serious new problem. Ryuji explains that their brains are being flooded with dopamine from repeated dark ball kills, rewiring the reward system until hunting becomes an addiction. The monsters respawn so quickly that stopping begins to feel unbearable. The results are undeniable. Isabella has leapt from level 44 to beyond 200 in only a few hours. Her power has exploded, so has the danger. Ryuji repeats the warning in the clearest possible terms. If they start feeling restless whenever they are not hunting dark balls, then the monsters are already attacking their minds. The girls admit that merely thinking about dark balls now makes them excited, while leveling fills them with an almost romantic happiness. That reaction proves Ryuji's diagnosis. Continued exposure will not kill their bodies, Ryuji warns. It will kill the purpose that made them adventurers, leaving only an empty obsession with gaining levels. He asks each girl why she chose this path, reminding them that no one enters a dungeon solely to hunt dark balls. Yet many capable adventurers reach this floor, become addicted, and never advance again. That is why the 500th floor is known as the trial floor, a place that tests the strength of an adventurer's will, rather than the power of their body. Only those with a will of steel can pass beyond it. Isabella, Ayano, and Hanfa are intimidated for a moment, become even more captivated by Ryuji's uncompromising lesson. All three insist on facing the trial and mastering the steel style so they can make Ryuji proud. Fortunately, he anticipated this situation and prepared special support equipment. From his item box, Ryuji produces 3 helmets modeled after the DTJC armor. The girls fall silent at the sight of their unexpected gifts. Ryuji explains that he stayed awake all night crafting them, and that each helmet reduces dark ball attack effects by 96%. They may also take the equipment home as a souvenir of the day. Ayano and Hanfa immediately try their helmets on and ask for a magic mirror to inspect the result. Isabella hesitates, while the others eagerly model their new equipment. Ayano and Hanfa transform the moment into a superhero performance, declaring themselves the purple and red members of a DT squadron. Isabella remains frozen, unable to bring herself to cover her face. She finally admits that a childhood horror movie left her terrified of masks and enclosed helmets. Ryuji offers a different color instead, and Isabella's mood changes instantly when she learns blue is available. Wearing the blue helmet Ryuji made personally, Isabella proudly announces her arrival as the squadron's blue member. With the protective gear equipped, the party resumes hunting under Ryuji's stacked buffs. Their afternoon schedule changes completely as the girls continue leveling, exactly as Ryuji expected. He is relieved that none of them question the suspicious equipment and knowledge he keeps producing from another world. 2 hours earlier, Isabella had asked Hanfa and Ayano how Ryuji could possibly become so powerful. He appeared only a year and a half ago, yet he is already far beyond the current world rankings. The three compare his impossible growth with their own levels and conclude that ordinary dungeon exploration cannot explain it. Achieving such strength should require something closer to 10 uninterrupted years of experience. A student who attended Ryuji's middle school described him as completely ordinary back then, deepening the mystery. Hanfa suggests asking him directly, but even her curiosity has limits. Ayano and Hanfa agree that they dislike people intruding into private matters, including Ryuji's. They will wait until he chooses to explain the truth himself. Isabella is relieved that Hanfa and Ayano share her respect for Ryuji's privacy, and the three promise to become adventurers he can trust. Nearby, Ryuji waits for the hunt to finish while thinking about a newly released novel. A few hours later, the dungeon guidance ends with each girl gaining roughly 400 levels. Ayano reaches 425, Isabella 427, and Hanfa 432, leaving all three deeply grateful to Ryuji. After teleporting everyone out and disbanding the party, Ryuji notices his public level still appears as 1, while the girls' enormous gains will immediately affect the rankings. Too exhausted to manage the fallout, he goes home to sleep. Meanwhile, inside America's Rocky Mountain dungeon, Linda Bluestone and her team defeat the 45th floor boss using dungeon-made magic firearms. Their victory establishes a new world record. The focused expedition raises Linda to level 45, finally achieving her dream of becoming the world's highest-ranked adventurer. She celebrates without knowing the rankings have already changed elsewhere. The next morning, Takeshi urgently tells Ryuji that a major problem has erupted. Ryuji assumes it is another animal soiling the front gate, but this crisis has nothing to do with neighborhood pets. The updated adventurer rankings have thrown the entire world into an uproar over power leveling. Ryuji remains strangely calm. After all, he knowingly helped Hanfa's party gain nearly 400 levels in a day. The new list places Hanfa first at level 432, Isabella second at 427, Ayano third at 425, and Linda a distant fourth at only 45. One private lesson has rewritten the global hierarchy. Takeshi explains that news sites and anonymous boards are overflowing with accusations that DTJC secretly power-leveled the girls. Even Ryuji's channel comments have descended into complete chaos. Many viewers argue that power leveling must be conducted fairly, while others claim the so-called dictator is finally revealing his true colors. Ryuji suspects people simply enjoy calling him a dictator and refuses to take the noise seriously. The girls receive even harsher backlash and eventually disable their social media comments. They did nothing illegal, but adventurers struggling for every level resent watching 3 privileged students soar past 400 overnight. Takeshi reminds Ryuji that trying to satisfy every critic is impossible. Before the conversation can continue, he receives an unexpected call from the academy. Takeshi reports that journalists and streamers have surrounded the school, attempting to interview every student they can find about Isabella, Hanfa, Ayano, and their impossible level increase. He has already warned the special class not to reveal anything and assures Ryuji that the group can be trusted. They are friends now, and Takeshi asks him to rely on them whenever necessary. Ryuji appreciates the support, though the academy has been dragged into a major nuisance. Acting Principal Tanaka then calls and asks him to come to the chairman's office to discuss the power leveling crisis. At school, Ryuji finds Acting Principal Tanaka and Chairman Iwaki waiting alongside Hanfa, Isabella, and Ayano. The 3 girls have been summoned for the same reason. Iwaki marvels at having the world's 4 strongest adventurers in one room, and immediately wanders off topic by asking Ryuji about rare materials from deeper floors. Even the chairman cannot resist the possibilities. The real reason for the meeting is a summons from Prime Minister Takahashi, who wants information about power leveling and its potential connection to Japan's national energy problem. Ryuji realizes the situation has become far more troublesome than expected. Before meeting the Prime Minister, Iwaki asks whether Ryuji intends to turn power leveling into a business. Ryuji rejects the idea instantly, explaining that Hanfa and the others were a special exception. When pressed again, Ryuji declares that he will never power level anyone else, because the process is simply too exhausting. Iwaki then asks the 3 girls to share their own views before the government meeting. The girls explain that power leveling matters far less than protecting Ryuji's work as DTJC. Interfering with the man whose videos allow countless adventurers to explore safely would cause damage on a global scale. Chairman Iwaki thanks Ryuji on behalf of humanity for helping preserve modern civilization. Hanfa's party promises to assist once they adjust to level 400, while the Academy and Iwaki Industries pledge full support. The meeting ends, but Ryuji immediately receives an urgent call from Kojima, his tax accountant and legal representative. She asks whether he can meet later that day. Ryuji agrees to rearrange his schedule, only for Kojima to announce that she is already coming to collect him. He teleports home and waits for her arrival. Kojima reveals that the President of the United States contacted her through MeTube's parent company and made an emergency visit to Japan solely to meet DTJC. Since Ryuji is still a minor, she stepped in as his representative. Her unusually cheerful confidence reassures Ryuji. Contracts and legal negotiations are exactly where he struggles, making Kojima's protection more valuable than ever. Ryuji and Kojima are welcomed into a formal reception room, where the visiting leader introduces himself as President Bluestone of the United States. The international negotiation begins. Although the Americans offer interpreters, neither Ryuji nor Kojima needs one. Ryuji explains that leveling improves intelligence, and languages have become especially easy for him. Before presenting the request, President Bluestone introduces America's leading adventurer, his granddaughter, Linda Bluestone. She looks visibly disappointed when she realizes the young man before her is DTJC. Linda bluntly tells Ryuji that he appears weaker and cuter in person than in his videos. Her first impression lands with all the subtlety of a gunshot. The president gets straight to business with 2 requests. DTJC must film a walkthrough of an American dungeon, and Ryuji must power level the country's strongest national party. Both are enormous demands. Because they arrived before the formal meeting time, the group begins with an informal discussion. The dungeon video and power leveling proposal are placed on the table before any official agreement is made. Kojima first confirms that Ryuji was responsible for the recent power leveling. Once he admits it, she carefully controls the conversation, determined to prevent his first international negotiation from becoming a disaster. She predicts that the United States will offer extremely generous rewards, but advises Ryuji to postpone any decision. Both requests should be examined carefully rather than accepted under pressure. President Bluestone proposes $1 billion for the dungeon video, and 5 times the fee paid by Isabella's party for each power-leveled adventurer. Even Ryuji is stunned. While Kojima's expectations prove completely accurate, the room waits for an answer as Ryuji weighs the staggering offer against the trouble it will create. For once, even he cannot respond immediately. Seeing him cornered, Linda protests that American bargaining tactics are unfair to a Japanese teenager who is an adventurer, not a businessman. The president relents and says America will pay whatever reasonable amount Ryuji requests. Ryuji decides to speak plainly. He creates dungeon walkthroughs for one selfish reason. If civilization collapses and anime production ends, his peaceful life will be ruined. He accepts the American Dungeon project because he wanted to film there eventually, but asks for no payment beyond the right to upload the footage on his own channel. Both Linda and the president object, insisting his videos save humanity and cannot be given away for free. Ryuji is terrible at placing a price on that kind of work, and Kojima can only guide him so far. In his mind, Daenerys' old lesson returns. After every argument and every offer, the final decision must still be his. Ryuji asks Kojima to deliver his answer the following night at the same place, admitting that deciding immediately has caused trouble before. The meeting ends with both sides expecting a considered response. Kojima drives Ryuji home, proving once again how dependable she is. Takeshi welcomes him back and immediately teases him about enjoying an older woman date, which Ryuji firmly denies. Ryuji has already decided to reject the power-leveling request, but the dungeon payment still bothers him. Accepting money might make future refusals harder, and he hates any arrangement that makes him feel forced. Takeshi reminds him that dungeon work becomes deadly the moment motivation slips. He also reveals that investments made from Ryuji's MeTube advance have already multiplied the money more than 20-fold, meaning Ryuji never needs to accept dangerous work for cash. With that reassurance, Ryuji decides to film the dungeon for free and reject the power-leveling request. A message from Chairman Iwaki arrives immediately afterward, though Takeshi first mistakes it for a love letter. Iwaki's message reveals that the government is considering an adventurer tax, possibly as high as 100 million yen per level. Ryuji stares at the proposal in disbelief. The policy is still under discussion, but Iwaki believes it will pass unless something drastic changes. Heavy taxes would drive adventurers and major industries overseas, weakening Japan while other countries gain their resources. Ryuji begins blaming himself, reasoning that free walkthrough videos made dungeon work appear easy and profitable, even though adventurers gamble their lives. In his mind, the new tax is another unintended consequence of his influence. Takeshi insists Ryuji is overthinking it, because countless adventurers would already be dead without his videos. When Ryuji sinks into gloom anyway, Takeshi decides he needs companionship more than another argument. He challenges Ryuji to a game, and the two quickly fall into loud, childish competition. Banana attacks, accusations of cheating, and frustrated shouting replace international politics for the evening. Ryuji loses again because Takeshi refuses to use cheap items, while Proto enthusiastically comments on the match. The simple game gradually pulls Ryuji out of his dark mood. Afterward, Ryuji thanks Takeshi for the first carefree fun he has had in a long time. Takeshi then mentions that his class will leave for a dungeon expedition in Britain the following week, and promises to contact him while overseas. Once Takeshi leaves, Ryuji realizes his friend came specifically because he was worried. The concern was quiet and awkward, but genuine. Takeshi really is a good person. At the next meeting in the U.S. ambassador's residence, Ryuji first asks whether America plans to impose special taxes on adventurers. President Bluestone promises the opposite. Resource sellers receive incentives, not punishment. Satisfied with that answer, Ryuji accepts the walkthrough project. America will pay $1 million per dungeon and $10 million for the 700-floor Rocky Mountain dungeon, while the edited footage will be released through DTJC. The United States agrees to provide complete support for filming and accepts the terms without complaint. Then the discussion turns to power leveling, where Ryuji admits there are several serious problems. The first is Linda's gunner class. Ryuji bluntly explains that power leveling a firearms specialist is difficult, and that he would rather avoid the attempt entirely. To his surprise, Linda accepts the criticism instead of arguing. Ryuji had expected an angry response, but she is listening carefully. His second concern is controlling the strength created by rapid growth. After level 400, an adventurer possesses power far beyond normal humanity, enough to defeat a 100th floor dragon boss with insulting ease. The exact comparison confuses everyone, but the danger is clear. If Ryuji empowers a violent or unstable person, no ordinary force could stop them once they go on a rampage. Ryuji admits that he could personally stop any empowered criminal, but he cannot guarantee arriving before innocent people are harmed. President Bluestone accepts the seriousness of this second concern. Those are Ryuji's two major objections, though several smaller complications remain. The president then asks why he trusted Isabella's party, hoping to identify a standard Linda might also meet. Ryuji recalls random shuffle, when Isabella, Hanfa, and Ayano nearly died protecting careless classmates instead of saving themselves. Had he arrived moments later, all three would have been killed. At the time, he harshly lectured them that dungeon survival is each adventurer's own responsibility and ordered them never to risk their lives so recklessly again. Outwardly, he called their decision wrong. Privately, however, Ryuji thanked them from the bottom of his heart. He was grateful that brave and compassionate adventurers were willing to stand between helpless people and death. The confession reveals why he chose to trust them, and Linda is deeply moved by the answer. Ryuji immediately becomes embarrassed by how much of his true feelings he has exposed. Kijima tells him there is nothing shameful about it, because the same courage and kindness define Ryuji himself. Despite being only a first-year student, he carries a crushing burden, and she wants her work to lighten it. President Bluestone acknowledges that Ryuji is a good person, but warns that kindness can be exploited. Linda then asks for one chance to prove she is trustworthy, and Ryuji is caught by a devastating upward glance. He gives in almost immediately, to Kijima's amusement. Linda will assist with the American walkthrough videos, allowing Ryuji to evaluate her character before deciding anything about power leveling. Proto predicts that Ryuji will probably help her eventually anyway, but the arrangement is still useful. The American walkthroughs may also help adventurers relocate if Japan's tax authorities become too aggressive. When the trip begins, Ryuji complains that international travel is tedious and wishes he could teleport directly. Unfortunately, teleportation only reaches places he has previously visited. America provides a government aircraft, which Ryuji considers excessive. Linda insists that transporting DTJC and the world's greatest adventurer this way is completely natural. Her formal treatment still makes Ryuji uncomfortable, though Linda awkwardly admits she does not dislike that vulnerable side of him. She remained in Japan specifically to escort him after her grandfather returned home. During the flight, Linda reveals that she learned Japanese from anime and manga. Ryuji tests her knowledge, and the conversation quickly turns into an enthusiastic debate over directors, genres, and recommended series. Ryuji realizes that shared tastes make Linda easier to understand, though Proto warns that his trust is developing far too quickly. Their endless anime discussion makes the journey to America pass almost instantly. At the dungeon entrance, Ryuji gathers the American team and begins production. Everyone has already reviewed the plan, so the first official filming session can finally start. Wearing the DTJC armor, Ryuji introduces the Yosemite dungeon walkthrough and invites the gunner assistants to present themselves. For privacy, the four Americans use the code names Alpha, Beta, Delta, and Theta. Linda suddenly removes her helmet because it is difficult to breathe, forcing Ryuji to stop the recording just after completing a good take. She suggests simply editing the mistake out. Ryuji explains that her identity would still require heavy censorship, so Linda reluctantly puts the helmet back on. Competitive pride wins, especially after she remembers Isabella endured hers without complaint, filming resumes with camera drones following the team through the corridor. Moments later, monsters burst through the dungeon wall and charge directly into the carefully staged walkthrough. The American gunners respond instantly, surrounding the invading monsters with disciplined crossfire. Their coordination confirms why they are considered the country's strongest party, and the cameras capture excellent footage. Ryuji handles the deeper floors alone, where even Linda's team would be endangered, and eventually completes every planned American walkthrough. With filming finished, he can finally decide the power leveling request. Ryuji tells Linda and her teammates that he has judged them trustworthy and will accept the job. His smile fades as he warns that betraying that trust will have consequences. He promises to take full responsibility if he empowers the wrong people, then gives everyone one final opportunity to withdraw. Once the training begins, there will be no easy way back. An uneasy silence fills the White House meeting room as Ryuji repeats that this is their last chance to leave. The decision belongs to each adventurer. Linda refuses immediately, almost offended that he expects hesitation. As America's fourth-ranked gunner, she has no intention of stepping away from the opportunity. Mike Northwood and Kirk Reynolds also remain, declaring that no one in their party will lose courage now. The team's confidence appears absolute. Franco Gemma is the exception. He admits that living under DTJC's permanent scrutiny would be unbearable and withdraws, apologizing despite making the sensible choice. Linda hears the phrase, "watched forever," very differently, imagining that Ryuji will keep his eyes on her for all eternity. Her embarrassment turns the warning into something dangerously romantic. Ryuji praises Franco for knowing when to retreat and insists there is no shame in leaving. With 3 participants remaining, President Bluestone formally thanks him for accepting America's power-leveling request. The training is scheduled for 2 days later in Rocky Mountain Dungeon, with Kijima assigned to review the contract. Only one unresolved matter remains before Ryuji can begin. Later that night, Linda visits Ryuji's hotel room but receives no answer because he has already teleported home to Japan. While she wonders whether he is asleep, he is relaxing thousands of kilometers away. Proto welcomes Ryuji back and points out that teleporting across borders technically counts as illegal entry. Ryuji is startled, so Proto advises using it only for emergencies and never getting caught. Proto then asks whether Ryuji has replied to Hanfa and the others online. He has not. Explaining the power-leveling decision and confidential details feels exhausting, so he postpones the message again. Proto worries about his habit of avoiding difficult conversations, yet admits the situation is strangely comforting. In the other world, Ryuji could die at any moment. Now his biggest concern is disappointing girls who care about him. Ryuji quietly remembers Daenerys and acknowledges the truth. He survived the other world's brutal life because she remained beside him when everything else tried to break him. The doorbell suddenly rings, and Ryuji finds a suspicious visitor wearing a DTJC cap, sunglasses, and matching clothes. The disguise is so obvious that it becomes alarming. Ryuji tries to close the door, but the visitor politely asks him to wait and removes her glasses. The formal wording and familiar eyes reveal the truth before she says her name. The mysterious DTJC fan is Ayano Sanzanin herself, still dressed in oversized merchandise and visibly nervous about appearing at his home unannounced. Ryuji asks why she is not training in Britain with the others, and Ayano admits she teleported back from the United Kingdom. Since he has ignored everyone's messages, he knows an interrogation is coming. Ayano admits she secretly returned to Japan because she wanted to see Ryuji's face. She is not angry about the unanswered messages and is simply relieved that he has not changed. Ayano tells him to ignore Line and focus on whatever responsibilities demand his attention. No matter what happens, Ayano, Hanfa, and Isabella have complete faith in him. Ryuji accepts the reassurance without fully understanding it, then realizes how worried Ayano must have been to abandon the expedition and come home. Her calm smile hides days of concern. 2 days later, the American power leveling program begins with an unexpected classroom lesson. Ryuji insists on reviewing the basic mechanics of the gunner class before anyone enters the dungeon. Linda protests that every participant is already above level 40, but Ryuji refuses to assume their knowledge is flawless. To her teammates' surprise, she quickly accepts that he has a point. Ryuji demonstrates that ordinary firearms cannot fire inside dungeons, while nearly identical dungeon-made magic guns function normally. Such weapons are usually recovered from treasure chests. The magic handgun he found while filming once belonged to someone who died in a dungeon. Since abandoned items are absorbed after 24 hours and can reappear as dungeon loot, The weapon may carry a fallen adventurer's legacy. Realizing the implications, Linda and the other American gunners stand at attention and salute the magic gun. Ryuji watches, puzzled but respectful of the gesture. Linda identifies it as an M17, a standard sidearm used by the U.S. military. Many soldiers died during the earliest dungeon operations, making it likely that this weapon belonged to one of them. She promises to care for it properly, and wonders whether her own favorite equipment might someday become treasure if she dies on an unreachable floor. The thought is unsettling and strangely meaningful. Returning to the lesson, Ryuji explains that gunners excel only at operating magic firearms and are mediocre in most other combat roles. Their real strength comes from the attack power stored in magic bullets, not their level. A weak gun or depleted ammunition leaves even an experienced gunner helpless. So Ryuji refuses to skip supposedly obvious facts. He presents a soft slime-based target designed to absorb impacts without breaking. To establish a baseline, Kojima fires first as an ordinary person with no adventurer traits. She is nervous despite practicing the previous day, but her shot lands successfully. The bullet penetrates only slightly before stopping inside the resistant target. Ryuji records the damage as the control result. Linda then fires the same weapon and hits the exact center. Despite being a level 46 gunner, her shot produces essentially the same penetration as Kojima's. Ryuji repeats the test himself and achieves identical power, proving that the magic bullet determines the damage. Even DTJC cannot strengthen an unchanged round merely by pulling the trigger. He explains that mithril coating can improve penetration and that the advanced gunsmith skill allows gunners to create stronger bullets with magic. Most acquire the skill near level 100. Linda's team wonders how long reaching that level would normally take. Ryuji answers that power leveling will carry them far beyond 100 with ease. For the actual training, he unveils a much larger, customized magic gun, capable of firing exceptionally powerful rounds. This weapon will let the gunners destroy the targets needed for rapid growth. With Kojima's role complete, Ryuji escorts her safely out and asks her to invoice him for the assistance. She leaves delighted after finally experiencing a dungeon firsthand. After Kojima leaves, Linda senses an unexpectedly intimate atmosphere between the accountant and Ryuji. She had worried only about Isabella's party, but now another potential rival has appeared. Linda forces herself to focus on the power leveling instead of jealousy. If she performs badly, Ryuji will look foolish for trusting her, and she refuses to let Kojima occupy his attention uncontested. Ryuji returns with the equipment and activates a dungeon core, explaining that it allows unrestricted travel to any cleared floor. The device is a guaranteed first-time reward for defeating a dungeon boss. He bans questions before curiosity can derail the schedule and teleports the American team directly to Rocky Mountain Dungeon's 500th floor. The trial floor awaits. Dark balls fill the landscape, but ordinary magic bullets would simply bounce away. Ryuji's specially manufactured ammunition can pierce them, so he orders the gunners to hunt as quickly as possible. Linda braces the customized weapon, aims for the central core and fires. The explosion is deafening even across the vast floor. Her first shot penetrates the dark ball's center and destroys it instantly. Ryuji applauds the precision, exactly what he expected from an elite gunner. The weapon handles perfectly in Linda's hands, and the victory triggers her first level up. The sudden sensation catches her completely off guard. Another level follows immediately, then another. Linda experiences consecutive growth for the first time, while Ryuji remembers how awkward the same reaction looked when Ayano went through it. Mike and Kirk begin leveling as well, their bodies flashing repeatedly without pause. Ryuji discovers that the spectacle remains awkward even when the adventurers are not girls. The scene reminds Ryuji of hunting dark balls in the other world, where Daenerys's buffs finally allowed him to defeat one after repeated attempts. Back then, he proudly credited her support for the victory. As Ryuji leveled again and again, he thanked Daenerys with innocent enthusiasm. Her face reddened, though he had no idea why at the time. Watching Linda now, Ryuji finally understands Daenerys' embarrassment. Before he can linger on the memory, a far more serious warning from those days returns. Daenerys once explained that every person has an individual level limit. No amount of effort can force growth beyond that natural boundary. Ryuji needed roughly level 1200 to defeat the Demon King. while his divine hero status placed that goal within reach. Without such a blessing, even perfect training could end far too early. Daenerys apologized that her own level had stopped increasing and warned that she might be unable to accompany him into the final dungeons. The memory still carries the fear of being left alone. Some adventurers reach their limit near level 100. Hanfa's party passed safely, but Ryuji now watches Linda and the others closely, uncertain whether all three can continue. The Americans reach the mid-100s before their ammunition runs out. With every member still leveling steadily, Ryuji prepares more rounds but calls for tea first. Linda argues they do not need a break yet, so Ryuji explains that rapid level-ups strain the body even when no injury is visible. His special tea restores the newly expanded HP and MP while easing that pressure. During the break, Linda notices Ryuji wearing glasses and blurts out that they look extremely cute on him. Her teammates silently encourage her bold approach, while Ryuji wonders whether she has developed a glasses obsession. Ryuji cannot help thinking that Linda has the unmistakable energy of an anime heroine. Embarrassed by the comparison, he ends the break and sends everyone back to work. For now, he stops worrying about their unknown level limits because nothing can be done until someone actually reaches one. Still, the dungeons remain full of mysteries, and defeating the Demon King once does not make him invincible. The power leveling continues throughout the day, with regular tea breaks and protective DTJC helmets, reducing the Dark Ball's mental effects. By afternoon the gunners can fire standing, and by evening the prepared ammunition is exhausted. Every participant safely reaches the level 400 range. Linda climbs to 432, Mike reaches 434, and Kirk becomes the provisional world number 1 at 436. The American rankings are rewritten overnight. Kirk apologizes for surpassing Linda, but she no longer cares about being first. Her original goal was proving that the supposedly worthless gunner class could stand beside the world's strongest jobs, and she has already succeeded. Linda explains that becoming number 1 with the weakest class carries a special romance that kept her fighting through repeated despair. Ryuji is impressed. Beneath the blunt personality, she is genuinely cool. A few hours later at the White House, Ryuji confirms that every requested American dungeon has been cleared and the power leveling is complete. The government also offers to purchase all Dark Ball materials and drops from him. When President Bluestone asks about his next move, Ryuji answers that he intends to binge the 3rd season of The Ninth Sun. Linda has to clarify that he is talking about anime, not geopolitics. The president agrees that rest is necessary, then offers future American cooperation with DTJC's activities. Ryuji finally understands that the question was about his long-term plans, not his viewing schedule. Back home, Proto announces that the United States arc has officially ended. Ryuji is confused by the idea that his ordinary life is being divided into story arcs. Proto lists the Otherworld arc, the Japan arc, and now the United States arc. Promising to preserve the tale of Ryuji saving the world even after he is gone, Ryuji finds the declaration increasingly ominous. Proto promises to include all of Ryuji's mistakes for historical accuracy, which makes the supposed legacy even more terrifying. Ryuji orders him never to create such a record. Seriously, never. Asked what comes next, Ryuji says he eventually wants walkthrough videos from every country. Britain is the likely next destination because he owes the special class a debt of gratitude. He will only visit nations that formally request help, but messages from around the world are already flooding the channel comments. Since the public comment section is DTJC's only contact route, identifying legitimate governments is difficult. Proto reports that the American walkthrough shattered the channel's view record and even convinced adventurers to relocate to the United States. From Proto's perspective, it is a small victory in an invisible international competition. Ryuji cannot feel the scale of that victory, but Proto thanks him on behalf of the adventurers whose lives and futures the videos have changed. The work matters even when the results remain distant. To avoid later complications, Ryuji decides to exclude countries that have not requested help, and those that mistreat adventurers. Britain's policies are acceptable, making the United Kingdom his confirmed next target. The remaining problem is contacting the British government while proving he is the real DTJC. Proto suggests using Isabella as an intermediary, though the American president would probably help as well. Proto immediately wonders whether Ryuji is romantically interested in Isabella. Ryuji denies it, and explains that her perfect formal image makes her harder to approach than Linda or Hanfa. Proto warns that asking America to mediate instead would hurt Isabella, who is both British nobility and Ryuji's student. Ryuji reluctantly recognizes that avoiding her may create a worse misunderstanding. Ryuji finally contacts Isabella and asks her to serve as an intermediary with the British government. Even through a video call, making the request face-to-face leaves him strangely nervous. Isabella is delighted that Ryuji has chosen to rely on her and accepts without hesitation. She promises to handle the matter personally and exceed his expectations. Ryuji also asks Kijima to represent him during the British negotiations because he is still a minor. She agrees to meet Isabella on site and looks just as pleased to be trusted. Neither woman complains when Ryuji hands them a troublesome international request, confirming that both are exceptionally kind. Proto diagnoses a classic dense protagonist problem, though Ryuji insists they merely like him as a person. In Britain, Isabella and Kijima begin finalizing the contract while Ryuji records content on Ueno Park Dungeon's 46th floor. The negotiations continue without requiring him to sit through every detail. He is also expanding DTJC's sub-channels with videos that do not reveal his identity, while Proto handles much of the technical work. Ryuji would rather watch anime, but Civilization needs a constant supply of dungeon information. For the DTJ Kitchen channel, Ryuji nervously begins a cooking lesson using poison boar meat. Hunting instructions remain on DTJC, while the more graphic butchering process is linked through the survival channel. He warns that every poisonous section must be removed because even one bite can kill, making pufferfish seem harmless by comparison. Today's menu includes ginger pork, tonkatsu, bacon, and ham. The recipes are otherwise ordinary, though dungeon-grown ingredients such as golden ginger greatly improve the flavor. Ryuji still finds speaking to a cooking camera more stressful than fighting monsters. Once the dishes are complete, Ryuji sits down for the essential taste test. One bite confirms the result, delicious. For reasons he cannot understand, the poison boar cooking video breaks the channel's recent view record. Ryuji is offended that food outperforms monster battles. While President Iwaki immediately asks to sample the dishes, Isabella reports that the British contract is still being negotiated and apologizes for the delay. Ryuji assures her that it is normal. America simply handled the same process with unusual speed. With nothing urgent left, Ryuji decides to laze around, but Proto questions whether a content creator should leave only 200 prepared videos before an overseas trip. Ryuji firmly refuses to film more. Proto then reminds him that an annual financial report is approaching and may eventually expose his identity. Since the quiet life could end once that happens, Ryuji should enjoy his remaining anonymity while he still can. A message from President Iwaki offers the perfect distraction. The prototype collaboration hoodie is ready. Ryuji heads out with poison boar dishes stored inside the timeless item box. At Iwaki Industries, Ryuji finds Ayano waiting beside the prototype. Because the hoodie uses a unisex design, President Iwaki asked for her opinion, and her teleportation between Britain and Japan made the visit easy. Ayano is happy to travel any distance if it helps Ryuji. Her answer is immediate, sincere, and far more personal than a normal product consultation. They approve the design and move toward production, but President Iwaki proposes using the profits to support adventurers overseas. Recent events have convinced him that their planning must operate globally. Ayano recognizes it as another unseen battle for people, restrained by systems they cannot fight alone. She agrees to promote the project on social media, while Ryuji once again fails to notice the heroic language surrounding him. President Iwaki and Ayano rely on Ryuji's reach as an influencer, a title that surprises him despite his enormous audience. The growing number of collaboration offers confirms that the world already sees him that way. Ryuji still cannot see himself as an influencer, even while his image, recommendations, and products move audiences across the world. His public identity has grown far beyond his own self-perception. When Ryuji invites Ayano to share the poison boar dishes, she reluctantly declines. Isabella, Hanfa, and Ayano have promised not to gain a romantic head start, so she asks him to invite her again when everyone can attend. The DTJC and Iwaki Industries collaboration hoodie finally goes on sale, and demand becomes so overwhelming that purchases require a lottery. Ryuji had feared the product would fail. Instead, unsuccessful applicants are furious. A few days later at Ueno Park Dungeon, one adventurer proudly interrupts the party meeting to display the collaboration hoodie he won. He cannot resist bragging for a moment. His teammates are openly jealous, and he claims the lottery proves that honest effort eventually brings good fortune, just as his grandmother always said. Wearing the rare hoodie makes him feel invincible. Other adventurers recognize the hoodie and ask for a photograph with him, amazed to see one in person. He refuses because the party meeting is waiting and hurries away, promising perhaps another time. His companions think refusing the photo was unnecessarily harsh, but he only wants a beef bowl. Around them, the hoodie remains at the top of social media trends, and Iwaki Industries' stock continues rising. That night, in a residential district, bank branch manager Shunichi Matano hears a violent scream from his adult son Toshiya's room. At 11 o'clock, no normal activity should sound that desperate. His wife suggests Toshiya may finally be taking content creation seriously, though she warns Shunichi not to repeat the previous disaster. He goes to investigate and discovers his son performing as the ruler of the tiny Sirocco Empire channel. Toshiya begins a pre-recorded stream while pretending it is live, asking viewers not to expose the trick. Tonight's episode centers on another dramatic challenge for his loyal subjects. He plans to eat an extremely spicy convenience store ramen that has defeated numerous other streamers. Since Sirocco-sama normally loves spicy food, Toshiya boasts that victory will be easy. The challenge begins, and the first mouthful seems surprisingly manageable. Toshiya keeps eating while his father watches through the partly open door. Then the full heat arrives. Toshiya panics, declares the ramen impossibly spicy, and abandons the challenge as though his life is in danger. The performance ends in another painful failure. Shunichi feels sorry for his son's struggling channel, which has only a handful of subscribers despite his effort. Then he remembers that a famous creator named Furuya holds an account at his branch, and a possible connection begins to form.